Story 1. This story is titled, I Overheard My Wife Saying I Can Be Exchanged for Something Better. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit! Been sitting here for like an hour trying to figure out how to start this. I'm not great at writing stuff down, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. Sorry if this is all over the place. So I've been with my wife, I'll call her Mel, for 6 years now, married for 3 of those. We met in college, dated for a while, got married, the usual story. I always thought we were doing pretty good. Sure, we had some arguments about money and stuff, but I figured that was normal. Man, was I wrong. Last Friday night changed everything. Mel invited some of her friends over to our place. They do this thing where they get together every couple weeks to catch up. Usually I just stay in my home office and work or play games, but this time I came down to grab some snacks from the kitchen. I could hear them all talking in the living room. Mel, her best friend Jen, and a couple other girls from her work. They were talking about relationships and marriages and whatever. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard my name. Jen was in the middle of some dumb hypothetical, her voice all casual like this was just some fun little game to play. But seriously, Mel, what if someone better came along? What would you do then? I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop at first, but my name caught my ear, and well, screw it. If they were talking about me, I had a right to listen. And then Mel, my wife, didn't even hesitate, didn't even pretend to think about it. She just went, ugh, honestly? Just look at Tom. Like I was some outdated phone model she was sick of, but too lazy to replace. Then she laughed, like it was so obvious, and said, he's fine, I guess. But if someone with more drive, better prospects came along, yeah, I'd probably upgrade. They all laughed, like it was the funniest thing ever. My own wife basically telling her friends I'm her starter husband or something, but she didn't stop there. Nope, she started listing all these things she wished were better about me. I was baffled. Who says this? I felt like I was some damn secondhand car she was waiting to sell the moment something shinier rolled into the lot. Apparently, I'm too safe and boring. I don't make enough money to give her the lifestyle she wants. Our house isn't as nice as her friend Sarah's new place. My car is embarrassing. It's a 2020 Honda Civic, perfectly good car BTW. I'm not ambitious enough because I've been at the same company for 4 years. I just stood there in the kitchen listening to all this. Like when you're watching a movie and something really messed up happens and you're just frozen? That's how I felt. My wife just casually telling her friends she'd trade me in for a better model. The worst part? None of her friends even disagreed. They were all like, yeah, I get that, and you deserve better and stuff like that. One of them even said, at least he's good with the house stuff, like I'm some kind of butler or something. I must have stood there for like 10 minutes while they picked apart everything about me. My job, I work as a mechanical engineer, steady job, decent pay. My clothes, apparently I dress like a dad, even though we don't have kids. Even the way I laugh. Too loud? Since when is that a problem? The thing is, I've always supported Mel. When she wanted to quit her job to try starting her own business, I covered all our bills for 8 months until she decided she didn't like it anymore. When she wanted to go back to school for her master's, I paid for it. That car she drives that's so much nicer than mine? Yeah, I make the payments on that too. But listening to her talk to her friends, you'd think I was some lazy bum who just sits around playing video games all day. She even complained that I spend too much time working, the same work that pays for everything she wants. I ended up going back to my office without getting any snacks. Couldn't eat anyway. Just sat there staring at my computer screen trying to process everything. Like, how long has she felt this way? Has she been telling her friends this stuff all along? Is this what she really thinks of me? All these memories started popping up in my head. Times when she made little comments about other guys having better jobs or nicer things. How she always seems embarrassed when we run into her work friends. The way she keeps tagging fancy houses and cars on Instagram and sending them to me with messages like, someday, or goals. I always thought she was just dreaming big or whatever. Now I'm thinking she's been trying to tell me I'm not good enough this whole time. And yeah, maybe I should have picked up on it sooner. But when you love someone, you don't want to see that kind of stuff? Looking back, there were probably tons of signs I missed. But hearing her actually say it out loud to her friends, that hit different. Really makes you question everything. I started thinking about all the stuff I do for her, all the ways I try to make her happy. And what do I get back? Apparently, I'm just some placeholder until someone better comes along. But I couldn't just pretend everything was normal. I tried for like maybe an hour after her friends left, just sat in my office thinking about everything, reading your comments, trying to figure out what to do. Around midnight, I finally worked up the nerve to talk to her. Her friends had all gone home, and she was in our bedroom getting ready for bed like nothing happened. Like she hadn't just told everyone she'd trade me in for a better guy if she got the chance. I walked in and just straight up asked her, "Did you mean what you said to your friends about upgrading from me?" You guys should have seen how fast her face changed. First, she looked confused, then shocked. Then she tried to laugh it off. "Oh my God, were you listening to us?" It was just girl talk. Don't be so sensitive. Just girl talk. That's what she called it. Like somehow that makes it okay to tell your friends you're actively looking to replace your husband. I told her I heard everything. The comments about my job, my car, how I'm not ambitious enough, all of it. You know what she did? She tried to turn it around on me. Well, if you're going to spy on private conversations, you're going to hear things you don't like. That's what she said. Like I'm the bad guy for hearing her trash talk me in our own house. Then she started with this whole thing about how I'm taking it too seriously. And you know how the girls get when we're together, and we were just joking around. But I kept thinking about how none of it sounded like jokes. You know when someone's joking and when they're saying what they really think, but trying to cover it up. So I told her, even if you're joking, you should still respect me in front of your friends. Because that's the bare minimum, right? You don't just casually humiliate your husband like it's some kind of game. But she just rolled her eyes. Like I was the one making a big deal out of nothing. Like I was the problem for expecting some damn basic decency. I asked her straight up, "Do you actually want to be with me? Or am I just convenient until something better comes along?" She got mad then, started crying, fake tears, looking back, and saying stuff like, "I can't believe you'd question my love for you," and "You're being so insecure, and maybe this is why I feel stuck sometimes." That last one really got me. Stuck? After everything I've done for her? I basically laid it all out. How I've supported her through everything, paid for her master's degree, covered all the bills when she wanted to try her business thing, bought her car, everything. You know what she said? "Oh, so now you're keeping score? Real nice, Tom. Real nice." This is exactly what I was talking about with the girls. You don't understand what I need emotionally. You just throw money at everything and think that's enough. I was like, what? You're the one who's always talking about wanting more money, a bigger house, a better car. I'm the one who's been trying to make you happy this whole time. But she wouldn't hear it. Kept going on about how I'm twisting her words, and how she didn't mean it like that, and how I never understand her. We went back and forth for like an hour. Every time I tried to talk about what I heard, she'd either 1. Say I was taking it wrong 2. Try to make it my fault somehow 3. Start crying and saying I was attacking her 4. Change the subject completely. Finally, she says, "Fine. You want me to say I'm sorry? I'm sorry. Happy now? Can we go to bed?" Like that fixes everything. Like she didn't just admit to everyone that she's basically waiting for a better offer to come along. I ended up sleeping in the guest room. She texted me at like 2 a.m. saying, "Thanks for making me feel terrible and hope you're happy now that you've ruined our night." I didn't respond. What's even the point? She clearly doesn't get why I'm upset. Or worse, she gets it, but doesn't care. This morning was weird. She acted like nothing happened. Made coffee, asked what I wanted for dinner later, normal stuff. But I noticed she kept checking her phone more than usual. Maybe I'm paranoid now, but it got me thinking, is she already looking for that upgrade she talked about? I tried to work from home today but couldn't focus. Keep replaying everything in my head. Started looking back at old photos on my phone. Found this one from our wedding day. We both looked so happy. Now I'm wondering if she was thinking about upgrading, even back then. The more I think about it, the more stuff I remember. Like how she always wants me to go to her work events, but then acts weird when I'm there. Or how she never posts photos of us together on her Instagram anymore. Or how she's been working late more often lately. Maybe I'm reading too much into everything now. But after hearing what she really thinks of me, I don't know what to believe anymore. At that point, I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to brush it, but another part kept asking, what's there to fix? She straight up said she'd leave me for someone better. How do you come back from that? I just acted normal through the following days. But I noticed that her phone addiction got worse. Way worse. She's basically glued to it now. Always typing away, but the second I walk near her, she flips it over or locks the screen. And she's got this new thing where she takes calls in another room. Says it's work stuff. But since when does work need so many private conversations? And it's not just that. She's even stopped giving the bare minimum in our relationship. No more small check-ins. No more asking how my day was. No more little moments of affection. It's like she's physically here but mentally somewhere else. Somewhere way more interesting than me. Hell, half the time I feel like I'm just background noise in my own house. So the other day, I was paying our bills, as usual, and I noticed something that made me feel like an idiot. I've been handling all our major expenses. The mortgage, utilities, both our car payments, insurance, everything. Meanwhile, Mel's salary just goes into her personal account. She throws maybe a couple $100 toward groceries sometimes, but that's it. When I brought this up, she got super defensive, saying stuff like, "We agreed this arrangement works best," and, "You know I'm saving for our future." Yeah, right. Our future. The one where she replaces me with someone better. She's been canceling our plans a lot too. Last week, we were supposed to have dinner together on Wednesday, something we've done every week since we got married. She texted me at 4:30 saying she had to work late, but then I saw her coworker's Instagram story showing half the office leaving for happy hour at 3. When I asked her about it later, she said she forgot about the work thing and didn't want to make me feel bad. She's been canceling our plans a lot too. Last week, we were supposed to have dinner together on Wednesday, something we've done every week since we got married. She texted me at 4:30 saying she had to work late, but then I saw her coworker's Instagram story showing half the office leaving for happy hour at 3. When I asked her about it later, she said she forgot about the work thing and didn't want to make me feel bad. Money's become a weird issue too. She used to at least pretend to care about our budget. Now she's spending like crazy. New clothes, expensive makeup, salon visits every other week. When I mentioned maybe cutting back, since I'm paying for everything, she started crying about how I'm financially controlling and holding her back. Holding her back from what exactly? Spending all my money while she hoards hers? I tried talking to my best friend Mike about all this. He got quiet for a minute, then told me something I didn't know. Apparently, he and his wife saw Mel at this fancy restaurant downtown last week. She was dressed up way more than she ever does when we go out. Mike's wife wanted to go say hi, but before they could, some guy came and sat down at Mel's table. Mike said he figured I knew about it and didn't want to cause drama by mentioning it. That same night, Mel told me she was having dinner with her sister Kay. When I casually mentioned running into Mike downtown, I didn't. She didn't even flinch. Just said, "Oh, that's nice," and changed the subject. The lying is so easy for her now. I've started noticing other changes too. She's bought all these new outfits, but never wears them at home, or when we go out together. Her gym schedule makes no sense. Supposedly going at 6 a.m. some days, but her car's still in the driveway when I leave at 7:30. Coming home smelling like perfume she doesn't own. Always has some story ready about where she's been, but the details never quite add up. The weird thing is, when her family visits, she acts like everything's perfect. Last Sunday, her parents came over for dinner. Suddenly, she's all lovey-dovey, sitting next to me, touching my arm when she talks, laughing at everything I say. The second they left, right back to barely acknowledging me. I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. Like, am I just paranoid now because of what I heard her say to her friends? Or have I been blind this whole time? The more I think about it, the more obvious it seems. She's been checking out of this marriage for a while. That conversation I overheard wasn't just random complaining. It was her telling her friends what she really thinks. The most messed up part? She still expects me to handle everything. Pay all the bills, fix stuff around the house, deal with the car maintenance, everything a husband should do. But the second I expect anything from her, even just basic honesty about where she's been, I'm suffocating her. I kept thinking about something my dad told me when I was younger. He said, "Actions tell you everything you need to know about how someone feels about you." Well, Mel's actions are pretty clear now. I'm just a convenience to her. Someone to pay the bills and keep the house running while she does whatever she wants. But everything changed one day when my laptop died completely. Just wouldn't turn on at all. I had this super important work presentation the next day, and all my files were on there. I was freaking out because I needed to finish some edits, and Mel has this nice work laptop she brings home. Asked if I could borrow it for an hour tops just to access my cloud drive and fix the presentation. She got super weird about it. Said she needed to clean up work stuff first and that she'd set it up for me later. But she had yoga class? Yeah, right. And rushed out before doing anything. Left her laptop bag right there in the living room though. Now, I've never gone through her stuff before. Never wanted to. But I really needed to fix this presentation. And she'd logged into my laptop plenty of times before when she needed it. So I figured it wasn't a big deal to use hers. We're married, right? Opened up Chrome to access my cloud drive, and you know how it shows your most visited sites? There's Tinder. Right there. Not even hidden. Next to it, some dating site I've never heard of. And her email was open with a bunch of messages from guys. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped her laptop. There were all these conversations with different guys. She had profiles on multiple sites. But the worst part? In all of them, she listed herself as separated and looking to upgrade. She'd written this whole thing about how she was stuck in a stagnant marriage and ready to meet someone who matches my ambition, someone who could give her the lifestyle she deserves. The same stuff she'd said to her friends that night, but now she was advertising it to every guy in a 50-mile radius. I just sat there reading message after message. Guys telling her she deserves better, her complaining about me, setting up meetings at hotels. Some of these conversations went back months. I kept looking until I noticed something else. She had her Google Calendar open in another tab. All these yoga classes and girls' nights and work events. They lined up perfectly with her dating app meetups. But there's one conversation that got me throwing up. A guy telling her how good the night was. I knew I was done with everything related to her after seeing this. I started taking pictures of everything with my phone. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew she'd deny it all if I didn't have proof. The whole time I'm doing this, my hands are shaking, and I feel sick to my stomach. Then I found the worst part. She had this folder in her Google Drive called New Life Planning. Inside were screenshots of houses she liked, cars she wanted, even some kind of budget spreadsheet. But it was all calculated with way more money than I make. She had all these notes about the kind of guy she was looking for, how much he should earn, what kind of car he should drive, where he should live. It was like reading a shopping list. But instead of groceries, she was shopping for my replacement. And get this, she had a whole section about how to maximize assets during a divorce. She'd been researching divorce lawyers and alimony laws, planning it all out while still living off my money. I managed to finish my work presentation somehow, but I honestly don't remember doing it. Put everything back exactly how I found it. When she came home from yoga, I just watched her lie about where she'd been. She even made up this whole story about this great class she'd just taken. Meanwhile, I knew she'd actually been meeting some guy named Brad at a coffee shop. The next few days were surreal. I had to act normal while knowing everything. Watching her text these guys right in front of me, probably thinking she's so clever. Listening to her make up excuses about where she's going. The whole time I'm thinking about all those messages I saw. All those plans she's making. All those lies. Here's the really messed up thing. In some of her messages to these guys, she talks about how faithful she is, how she'd never cheat, and is waiting until she finds the right guy before leaving her marriage. Like somehow that makes it better? She's literally shopping for my replacement while living in my house and spending my money. But instead of confronting Mel right away, I decided to play the long game. I talked to a lawyer, found this guy, I'll call him Dave, who specializes in divorces, showed him everything I'd discovered. He gave me some solid advice about protecting myself. Turns out Mel's New Life Planning folder might actually help me. Shows she's been planning to leave for ages while letting me support her completely. Dave helped me make a detailed list of everything I needed to do. First up was money. I've been handling all our finances for years, so making changes wasn't too hard. Opened a new account at a different bank. Started moving my paycheck there instead of our joint account. Left just enough in the joint account for basic bills. When Mel noticed the joint account was lower than usual, I used her own excuses against her. Told her work was getting weird about overtime lately, and we needed to budget better. She freaked out a bit, started saying stuff about needing money for her personal expenses. I just shrugged and said times are tough. Funny how she talks about wanting someone with more money, but can't handle having less access to mine. Started documenting everything too. Every time she lies about where she's going. Every weird expense, every late night work event. I've got this whole spreadsheet now. Dave says it'll help show a pattern when we go to court. Even started keeping track of when her car's gone versus when she claims to be places. The numbers don't add up. Like, at all. The really interesting part has been slowly backing away from all the stuff I used to do for her. She had this whole routine of me taking care of everything while she did whatever she wanted. So I started forgetting things. Like when her car needed an oil change. Usually I'm right on top of that stuff. This time I just didn't mention it. She had to figure it out herself. Or this thing with her parents' anniversary dinner. Every year I'm the one who makes reservations, buys gifts, handles everything. This year? Nope. When she asked about it, I just said, "Oh, I thought you were handling that this time." She had to scramble to put something together last minute. Her parents definitely noticed the difference. I also started going to the gym too. Not because of her, but because I needed somewhere to put all this angry energy. Found this 24-hour place near my office. Go there instead of coming straight home after work. Mel actually complained about it. Said I'm not spending enough time with her. Pretty rich coming from someone who's actively trying to replace me. The money thing really started showing results last week. She wanted to buy some expensive dress for a work event. Usually she just gets it, and I deal with the credit card bill. This time the card declined. She called me all upset, and I just said, "Yeah, we need to watch our spending right now." You should have heard how fast her voice changed. Started talking about how maybe I should look for better opportunities or ask for a raise. I've been saving everything I can now. Canceled all these random subscriptions she had that I was paying for. Switched our cable package to something cheaper. Started buying generic brands instead of the fancy stuff she likes. Every time she complains, I just remind her about budgeting and being responsible. The best part? She's starting to realize that her perfect life was only perfect because I was making it that way. All these little things I handled, the house maintenance, the car stuff, the bills, the planning. She's having to deal with them herself now, and she's terrible at it. One time the garage door broke. Usually I'd drop everything and fix it. This time I just said, we should probably call someone, and went back to watching TV. She waited 2 days thinking I'd handle it, then finally had to call a repair service herself. Cost her $200 from her own money. Suddenly she's talking about how everything's getting so expensive. The really crazy thing is watching her try to keep up appearances. She's still on those dating apps? Yeah. I check sometimes through her laptop browser history, still telling guys she's looking for someone more ambitious. But now she's also dealing with a car that needs maintenance, a garage door that keeps acting up, and a credit card that actually has limits. All these things I'm forgetting to do? They're building a paper trail of exactly what I brought to this marriage. And watching her slowly realize that her better life might not be so easy to find. Well, maybe I'm enjoying that a little bit. Then, Mel decided to shoot her shot and fix things. She came up to me while I'm just sitting on the couch checking my phone, probably while she was messaging guys on her dating apps, TBH. She starts talking about this weekend trip she's planning with her friends. Yeah, the same ones from that night I overheard everything. The ones who agreed I wasn't good enough. She's all excited telling me how they're renting this super fancy lake house for a couple's weekend. Jen and Mark, Sarah and Pete, Lisa and Rob, all of them will be there. And she's like, "Tom, we should really go. It'll be so good for us." Acting all sweet, touching my arm, using that voice she does when she wants something. I almost couldn't believe it. Like, is she serious? This whole time she's been on dating apps calling herself separated and planning her upgrade, and now she wants to play happy couples with her friends? The same friends who sat there laughing about replacing me? But then I thought about it for a second. And guys, I said yes. Told her it sounded perfect. You should have seen her face light up. She probably thought she had me wrapped around her finger again. That I was just her stupid husband who would keep paying for everything while she looked for my replacement. The funny part? The whole next week she started acting like a wife again. Making actual effort, you know? Suddenly she's interested in my day. Making dinner, first time in months, trying to cuddle on the couch like nothing's wrong. She even posted about me on Instagram. First time since like January. Some cute caption about being excited for our romantic weekend. All her friends commented with heart emojis and couple goals and stuff. The same friends who know she's trying to replace me. The same ones who encouraged it. I've been talking to my lawyer. He's my friend. I'll call him Dave, this whole time. Yeah, I got a lawyer. More on that later. When I told him about the trip, he actually thought it was perfect timing. We spent like 3 hours in his office getting everything organized. All the screenshots from her laptop, the dating profiles, her new life planning folder. Still can't believe she actually named it that. The bank statements showing how I pay for literally everything while she saves her money. All of it. Got the divorce papers ready too. They're sitting in my briefcase right now. Mel keeps asking why I'm bringing work stuff on our romantic weekend, LOL. If she only knew. The weirdest part is watching her try so hard. Like she's auditioning for the role of perfect wife or something. Kept talking about how excited she is to spend time with me, making all these plans for the weekend. Meanwhile, her dating apps are probably blowing up her phone. I know because I still check her browser history sometimes. Yeah, maybe that's wrong, but honestly, who cares at this point? Dave said I need to stay calm and stick to the plan. Easy for him to say. He's not the one watching his wife pretend everything's fine while knowing she's been planning to leave for months. But I'm managing. Even helped her pack the car earlier. She was all, "You're being so sweet lately." Yeah, just wait. The drive up to the lake house was weird. Mel was acting like we were on our honeymoon or something. Kept trying to hold my hand while I drove, taking selfies for her Instagram, talking about all the couples activities she planned. I just nodded and went along with it. The place was exactly what you'd expect. One of those massive modern houses with floor-to-ceiling windows everywhere. Probably costs more than I make in 2 months just for a weekend. Mel's eyes got all wide when we pulled up. She loves this kind of stuff. always sending me links to houses like this saying goals. Meanwhile, I'm the one paying all our actual bills. Everyone else showed up around the same time. Jen and Mark got there first. Of course they did. Jen's probably been coaching Mel this whole time. Then Sarah and Pete, and finally Lisa and Rob, all standing around this huge kitchen island talking about their jobs and vacation plans and whatever. Mel was in full show-off mode, kept touching my arm, laughing super loud at everything I said, telling everyone how amazing things have been lately. I caught Jen giving her these little nods like, "Good job" or something. Made me feel sick watching it. We did dinner at this massive dining table. You know, the kind that's basically just for show because who has 12 people over for dinner regularly? Everyone's talking about their amazing lives and careers and stuff. After dinner, they all wanted to hang out on the deck. It's like 75 degrees out. Perfect weather. The girls were taking pictures, probably for their backup Instagram accounts. Yeah, Mel, I know about those too. The guys were doing that thing where they pretend to care about each other's jobs. I waited until everyone was settled in, told them I had something special planned, something for all of us to watch. Mel looked so excited. Probably thought I was going to play some sappy video about our relationship or something. Instead, I connected my laptop to the TV they had out there. First thing that popped up? Mel's Tinder profile. The one where she calls herself separated, then her nude photos she sent to guys, then her whole new life planning folder. You guys should have seen her face. She tried to grab my laptop, but I moved away. I just started reading some of her messages out loud. The ones where she talks about being stuck with me, where she tells guys she's looking for someone more ambitious, where she plans meetups and uses her friends as alibis. The best part? Her friends' faces. Sarah literally got up and walked away. Jen, you know, the one who started all this with her, "What if someone better came along?" question. She just kept saying, "Oh my God," over and over. The guys all looked super uncomfortable. Pretty sure Mark was mentally checking his own wife's phone in his head. Mel tried everything. First, she screamed at me for going through her laptop. Funny how she forgot about privacy when she wanted to use my credit cards. Then she tried to say it wasn't what it looked like. It was exactly what it looked like. Then she started crying and saying I was trying to humiliate her. Nah, she did that to herself. I pulled out the divorce papers and put them on the table. Told her, "Remember when you let me borrow your laptop because mine broke? Thanks for that, by the way." Really opened my eyes. She kept trying to get her friends to back her up, but nobody would. Even Jen, who's usually ready to defend Mel no matter what, just sat there looking at her feet. Guess it's different when there's actual proof right in front of them. I grabbed my bag and told everyone I already paid my share of the rental so they could stay and enjoy their weekend. Mel was full-on crying by then, trying to follow me to the car saying she could explain everything. The last thing I heard before I got in my car was Sarah saying, "I can't believe you do this to him." Coming from Sarah, that's pretty rich, considering she was one of the ones laughing about me that night. After I left, my phone was blowing up with messages. Not just from Mel, but from her friends too. Lots of "I'm so sorry, I had no idea" type stuff. Yeah, right. You had every idea. You encouraged it. After her family found out, man, that was rough. They called me the day after everything happened. Turns out Mel had been telling them I was the one checking out of the marriage, that I was distant and uninterested in all that. Her mom was crying on the phone asking what went wrong. I went over to their house and showed them everything. All the screenshots, the dating profiles, her new life planning folder, everything. Her dad just sat there getting quieter and quieter. This guy who used to treat me like his own son, who always bragged about how lucky Mel was to find such a responsible guy, he couldn't even look at the screenshots after a while. When Mel tried to explain everything to them later, it went badly, really badly. Her dad basically said he didn't raise her to be this kind of person. Her mom just cried. They're still talking to her. They're her parents after all, but it's different now. Her dad hasn't spoken to me since that day, but he did send a text saying he was sorry and that I deserved better. That hurt more than I expected. Her friends? They all scattered like cockroaches when the lights come on. Jen tried to message me saying she never meant for any of this to happen, and how she was just trying to be supportive of her friend? Yeah, super supportive, laughing about replacing your friend's husband. Mark, Jen's husband, actually called me to apologize. Said he had no idea what the girls talked about when they got together. Sure, buddy. Sarah and Lisa both unfriended Mel on everything. Guess they're worried their husbands might start wondering what they say during their girls' nights too. The really crazy part, Mel's sister, Key, was furious with her. Not just because Mel used her as an alibi for meeting guys, but because Kay actually stood up for Mel to their parents at first. Told them there must be some explanation. Then she saw all the evidence and realized how many times Mel had lied to her face. They're not speaking now. As for Mel, she's staying with her cousin Emma in the city. The only family member who will still put up with her, I guess. She's been trying to message me constantly. First, it was angry stuff about how I humiliated her. Yeah, because I'm the one who made dating profiles while married. Then, it was crying about how sorry she is and how she'll change. Now it's switched to trying to negotiate. Like somehow she thinks she deserves half of everything even though I have proof she was planning to leave. Dave, my lawyer, says the divorce should be simple. All those screenshots of her planning to leave while living off my money? Super helpful legally. She tried saying she deserved alimony because she got used to a certain lifestyle, but that fell apart when Dave showed her own messages about looking for a richer guy. Kind of hard to claim you need support when you're literally bragging to guys about your own secret savings. The house feels weird now. Mel came with her cousin to get some of her stuff last week. She kept trying to talk about how we could work this out while packing up her clothes. Wanted to know if she could take some furniture her parents gave us for our wedding. Told her to talk to Dave about it. She didn't like that. I'm doing okay, I think. It's crazy how different everything is now. 2 months ago, I was standing in my kitchen listening to my wife tell her friends she wanted to upgrade from me. Now she's living in her cousin's spare room, trying to figure out how to afford her own place. Turns out the better life she wanted isn't so easy when you actually have to pay for it yourself. The dating apps are still active. Her cousin's friend saw her profiles. Now she lists herself as recently separated and independent woman. Had to laugh at that last part. Real independent now that she actually has to pay her own bills. But funny thing happened at the gym last week. There's this girl who works there. She's been helping me figure out proper form for exercises and stuff. We got talking after my workout one day, ended up getting coffee. Turns out she went through something similar with her ex last year. Not the exact same situation, but she gets it, you know. We've been texting a bit. Nothing serious, just talking. She's cool. Actually works for what she wants instead of expecting everything handed to her. Didn't think I'd be interested in dating so soon, but it's nice just talking to someone normal who doesn't play games. Made me realize something too. While Mel was out there looking for an upgrade, I was the one who actually ended up with something better. Someone who's honest about who they are. I actually have plans tonight. The gym girl is teaching me how to make sushi. Thanks for all the support, guys. Never thought I'd be posting about my marriage falling apart on Reddit, but sometimes the worst things lead to better places, I guess. Oh yeah, canceled the Netflix account yesterday. The one Mel's probably still using at her cousin's place. Funny how I don't even care about that stuff anymore. Got better things to focus on now. Story 2. This story is titled, My Daughter Falsely Accused Me Leading to My Imprisonment for a Long Time, and now that I have been released, I will repay everything I went through in the same coin. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I don't even know where to start. Writing this makes me so angry, but I need to get it out. My daughter, let's call her Sarah, has been nothing but trouble for years. I don't know if it's how we raised her, or if she's just wired this way, but it feels like she was born to test my patience. She's selfish, ungrateful, and never takes responsibility for anything. It wasn't always this way. When she was little, she was sweet. A bit stubborn, sure, but I thought it was normal kid stuff. But then middle school hit, and everything changed. She started acting like the world owed her something, like she was better than everyone else. She'd throw tantrums if she didn't get her way, slam doors, scream at us, you name it. My wife kept saying, it's just a phase. She'll grow out of it. She didn't. By the time Sarah hit her teenage years, it was like she'd decided to make our lives a living hell. She lied about everything. Where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. If her lips were moving, she was probably lying. She skipped school so much that the principal called us in for a meeting. I told her she needed to shape up, but she just rolled her eyes and said, whatever, Dad. At 16, she dropped out of high school entirely. One day, she came home and announced she wasn't going back. School's stupid, she said. I don't need it. My wife and I begged her to reconsider, but she wasn't hearing it. She packed her things, said she was leaving, and walked out the door without even looking back. She ran off with some boyfriend, a loser who didn't have a job or any prospects. I don't even remember his name. For 3 years, we didn't hear a word from her. No calls, no texts, nothing. My wife was heartbroken. She cried herself to sleep so many nights, wondering if Sarah was okay, if she'd ever come back. Me? I was angry, but I also felt relieved. Without Sarah around, the house was quieter. No drama, no fighting. I thought, maybe this is for the best. Then one night, she showed up on our doorstep. It was pouring rain, and she was standing there soaked to the bone, holding a trash bag full of clothes. I have nowhere else to go, she said. My first instinct was to slam the door in her face, but my wife rushed past me and pulled her inside before I could say a word. She hugged Sarah like she'd just come back from war, even though Sarah hadn't bothered to call us in 3 years. She's our daughter, my wife kept saying. We can't just leave her out there. I let her stay, but I knew it was a mistake. And boy, was I right. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she'd changed. Maybe she'd finally learned something from her time away. Nope. Within days, she was back to her old ways. She didn't look for a job, didn't help around the house, didn't do anything except sit on the couch scrolling through her phone. We'd ask her to do something simple. Take out the trash, do the dishes, anything. And she'd roll her eyes like we were asking her to move mountains. Why can't you do it? She'd say. I'm tired. Tired from what? Sitting on her ass all day? And then there were the late nights. She'd leave the house after dinner, saying she was going out for a walk, but she'd be gone for hours. Sometimes she wouldn't come home until after midnight. When I asked where she'd been, she'd just shrug and say, nowhere, like it was none of my business. She'd come back smiling, like she didn't have a care in the world, then flop down on the couch and start scrolling through her phone again. I tried to talk to my wife about it, but she kept making excuses. She's been through a lot, she'd say. She just needs time to adjust. Adjust to what? Sitting around all day? Acting like the queen of the house while we bent over backward to accommodate her? One night, I couldn't take it anymore. Sarah had been out until 1 a.m., and when she finally came home, I confronted her. Where the hell have you been? I asked. She just laughed and said, why do you care? That's when I told her she needed to start pulling her weight or find somewhere else to live. Her response? You're supposed to take care of me. That's what parents do. I couldn't believe it. After everything she'd done, dropping out of school, running away, ignoring us for 3 years, she still thought we owed her something. That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. I gave her an ultimatum. She had 24 hours to pack her things and leave. My wife tried to argue, but I shut her down. She's an adult, I said. She made her choices. It's time for her to deal with the consequences. At first, Sarah didn't take me seriously. She just laughed and said, yeah, okay, Dad, like it was some kind of joke. But when she realized I wasn't kidding, her attitude changed. She started yelling. You're a terrible father, she screamed. You don't love me. I stood my ground and gave her my words. She stormed off to her room, slamming the door so hard that the whole house shook. My wife gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the day, but I didn't care. It happened before the 4 hours I gave Sarah to leave were even up. I was in the living room, sitting on the couch and scrolling through the news on my phone, trying to decompress after another argument with my wife about her enabling Sarah. My patience was already worn thin, but I figured I just had to hold out until tomorrow night. Then Sarah would be gone for good, and I could finally have my home back. But life has a funny way of kicking you when you're already down. There was a loud knock at the door. 3 quick, sharp bangs that sent my heart racing. It wasn't a friendly knock. I got up to answer it, my stomach twisting into knots. When I opened the door, there were 3 police officers standing there, all of them looking dead serious. Sir, we have a warrant to search your property, one of them said. My mind went blank for a second. What? Why? We received an anonymous tip about illegal drugs being stored in this house, the officer explained. The report is filed under your name, my house. I felt like the ground had just been pulled out from under me. I wanted to argue, to slam the door in their faces, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. So I stepped aside and let them in, feeling a sense of dread settle over me like a heavy blanket. They spread out quickly, one officer staying in the living room while the others began searching the house. My wife stood frozen in the hallway, her face pale as a ghost. Sarah, on the other hand, sat on the couch, completely unfazed. She even had the nerve to smirk at me as the officers went upstairs to check the bedrooms. I knew. I didn't have proof, but I knew this was her doing. Who else could it be? She'd been sneaking around, staying out late, hanging with God knows who. She was the only one who had anything to gain from this chaos. The officers searched her room first. I stood in the hallway, watching as they tore through her things, flipping through her drawers, pulling the sheets off her bed, emptying out her backpack. But they didn't find anything. Not a single thing. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Sarah hadn't done anything after all. Then they moved on to my room. I didn't think they'd find anything there. Why would they? I wasn't involved in anything illegal, and I certainly didn't have drugs in my house. But then one of the officers pulled back the mattress on my bed and stopped. Here, he said, holding up a bag filled with what I immediately recognized as heroin. As the officer held up the first bag of heroin, I glanced at Sarah, hoping to see shock or confusion on her face. Instead, she smirked, her lips curling into a look that sent a chill down my spine. She didn't flinch, didn't deny anything. She just sat there like this was all a game to her. My blood boiled as I realized she wasn't just indifferent. She was proud of what she'd done. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. That's not mine, I said automatically, my voice shaking. But the officers weren't listening. They kept searching, and by the time they were done, they'd found several more bags hidden under my bed and across the room. Sir, you're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance, one of them said as they pulled out the handcuffs. My wife burst into tears. Sarah just sat there, watching the whole thing like it was a movie. When they cuffed me and led me out the door, I looked back at her one last time, hoping to see some kind of guilt or remorse on her face. Instead, she smiled. Smiled. The next few hours were a blur. They took me down to the station, fingerprinted me, took my mugshot. I kept saying over and over that the drugs weren't mine, that someone had set me up, but no one cared. The evidence was in my house, under my bed. That was enough for them. They denied me bail, saying the amount of heroin they found suggested I was involved in distribution. My lawyer tried to fight it, but it didn't matter. I was stuck in jail, waiting for the investigation to play out. Over the next few weeks, they started looking into the case. They tested the drugs for fingerprints, checked for DNA, anything that could link them to me. But there was nothing. My fingerprints weren't on the bags, and there was no evidence tying me to the drugs. Still, that didn't mean I was off the hook. The house was in my name, which meant the drugs were my responsibility, unless I could prove otherwise. My lawyer argued that someone else must have planted them there, but without solid evidence, it was my word against theirs. I knew it was Sarah. I didn't know how she'd done it, but I knew it was her. Maybe she'd been storing the drugs in my room without me noticing, or maybe she'd planted them there as a way to get back at me for kicking her out. Either way, she was the only one who could have done it. I spent 5 agonizing months in jail while the case dragged on. Not because the investigation was complicated, or because there wasn't enough evidence to clear my name, but simply because the court's schedule was backlogged. Apparently, justice had to wait its turn, even when someone's life was being torn apart. The delay felt like an eternity. Every day in that cell was another day I sat with my thoughts, replaying everything over and over. The betrayal, the humiliation, the helplessness, it all circled in my head like a broken record. My body was locked up, but my mind never stopped pacing. I couldn't stop thinking about how my own daughter had done this to me. I wondered if she was laughing about it, going about her life like nothing had happened, while I was stuck in a place I didn't belong. My wife visited me a few times during those months, but even her presence felt like another weight on my chest. She wasn't there to offer support or reassurance, not really. Every time she came, it felt like she was probing, fishing for answers I couldn't give her. I needed her to believe in me, to fight for me, but instead, she just seemed confused, unsure if she could trust the man she'd been married to for 20 years. Why would Sarah do something like this? She asked during one visit, her voice hesitant, like she couldn't even say the words out loud without doubting herself. I clenched my fist so tightly my knuckles turned white. You know why? I said, trying to keep my voice calm but failing. You've seen what she's like. You've seen her lie, manipulate, twist things to get what she wants. This isn't new. She shook her head, her face pale and drawn. But planting drugs? Getting you arrested? That's not just lying. I don't know. It's evil. Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her hands, wringing them like they held the answers. She's been on this path for years, I said bitterly. You just didn't want to see it. You kept making excuses for her. She's been through a lot. Every time she crossed the line, you let her get away with it, and now this is where we are. My words hit her like a slap, but I didn't care. I was too angry, too tired, too broken to soften the truth for her. If she had stood by me, believed in me from the start, maybe I could have handled this better. But instead, she kept second-guessing me, making me feel like I was the one on trial. Maybe you just didn't know what was happening, she said during another visit, her voice trembling. Maybe there's more to this. I stared at her, stunned by how little faith she had in me. Do you even hear yourself? I snapped. You're my wife. You've known me for 2 decades. Do you really think I'd get involved in drugs? Do you really think I'd risk everything for... What? Some heroin under my bed? She didn't answer. She just sat there, looking at the floor like a scolded child. But her silence spoke volumes. She didn't believe me. Not completely. She might have wanted to, but deep down, she had doubts. And that doubt cut deeper than anything else. The worst part was knowing that Sarah had planned this. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. This was calculated. She'd taken the time to hide the drugs in my room, knowing it would shift the blame onto me. She'd reported me anonymously, making sure the police had a reason to show up with a warrant. She'd done everything she could to frame me, and it had worked. And yet, my own wife couldn't see it. My parents, who visited once, couldn't see it. Even some of my so-called friends started to distance themselves, whispering behind my back. The evidence might not have pointed to me directly, but the stigma of being arrested for drugs was enough to make people doubt. And doubt is a powerful thing. It sticks to you like a stain you can't wash off. While the court delayed my hearing again and again, I had nothing to do but sit in that cell and stew in my anger. I thought about all the times Sarah had lied to my face, all the times I'd given her chances she didn't deserve. I thought about the way she'd smirked when the police took me away, like she knew exactly what she was doing. I thought about my wife's tears, not because I was in jail, but because she didn't know if she could trust me anymore. By the time I finally got my day in court, I wasn't the same person who had walked into that jail 5 months earlier. I was harder, angrier, and less willing to forgive. The system had failed me. My family had failed me. And all because of the selfish actions of one person, my own daughter. When the evidence finally came to light, Sarah's texts, the witnesses who saw her sneaking around, the lack of fingerprints or DNA tying me to the drugs, it was like the world suddenly remembered I existed. The charges against me were dropped, but the damage was already done. 5 months of my life were gone. 5 months where I was treated like a criminal, doubted by the people I thought loved me. My name might have been cleared legally, but socially, emotionally, I knew I'd never be the same. I wasn't just angry at Sarah. I was angry at everyone who doubted me, who'd left me to rot in that cell while they questioned whether I was the kind of man who would hide heroin under his bed. And in that anger, a seed of revenge started to grow. I didn't just want Sarah to face the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to know what it felt like to lose everything, to have the world look at her the way it had looked at me. I wanted her to pay. The first thing I did when I got home was sit in the living room in silence. My wife was there, standing awkwardly by the doorway like she didn't know what to say. Maybe she thought I'd be thrilled to be back, or maybe she expected me to forgive everything and move on. But I couldn't even look at her without feeling a mix of betrayal and anger. "Why didn't you believe me?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. My voice cracked a little, which pissed me off even more. I wanted to sound strong, not broken. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, wringing her hands. "It was hard, okay? The drugs were found in your room. What was I supposed to think?" "You were supposed to know me," I snapped. "You've known me for 20 years. You've seen what Sarah's like. But the second something bad happens, you turn on me?" My voice was rising now, and I didn't care. "You know I didn't do it. Deep down, you knew. But instead of standing by me, you let me rot in jail while you played mom to the person who actually did this." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't about to feel sorry for her. She wasn't the one who'd spent months in a cell, treated like a criminal. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but it didn't mean anything to me. Sorry didn't give me back the months I lost. Sorry didn't erase the fact that she doubted me when I needed her most." Over the next few days, I tried to piece my life back together. The investigation had finally turned up undeniable proof that Sarah was behind everything. The text messages on her phone showed that she'd been dealing drugs for months, maybe longer. She'd been using our house as a stash spot, hiding the heroin under my bed so that if anything went wrong, I'd take the fall. The texts were damning. They showed her coordinating with a dealer, talking about moving product, and even laughing about how Dad would never notice. I read every single one of them, my hands shaking with rage. How could my own daughter do this to me? What kind of person sets up their own father to save themselves? The police also found witnesses who came forward, saying they'd seen Sarah sneaking around late at night, meeting with sketchy people in parking lots and alleyways. One of her so-called friends admitted that Sarah had bragged about hiding drugs in my house because she thought it was the perfect cover. When the police finally issued a warrant for her arrest, I felt a mix of relief and bitterness. Relief that they were finally going after the real culprit, but bitterness that it had taken so long, and that I'd had to pay the price for her actions. Sarah was arrested a few days after I got home. They found her staying at some rundown apartment with a bunch of lowlifes. When the police searched the place, they found more drugs, along with scales, baggies, and cash. It was clear she wasn't just using, she was fully involved in the drug trade. I thought seeing her arrested would bring me some kind of closure, but it didn't. If anything, it just made me angrier. She didn't look scared or ashamed when they took her away. She looked annoyed, like this was just some inconvenience she'd have to deal with. My wife was devastated when she heard about the arrest. "She's still our daughter," she kept saying over and over, like a broken record. "She's made mistakes, but she's still our baby." I couldn't take it anymore. "She's not my daughter," I snapped. "Not anymore. My daughter wouldn't do this to me. My daughter wouldn't destroy her own family just to save her own skin." The legal process that followed was long, exhausting, and messy, much like everything else Sarah had left in her wake. She was charged with possession of drugs, intent to distribute, and perhaps most painfully for me, false accusations against her own father. That charge hit me like a gut punch every time I heard it spoken aloud in court, knowing that she had deliberately orchestrated my arrest, gone out of her way to frame me and watch me suffer, made my blood boil. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The text between her and her dealer, the witness statements, and even her own carelessness when stashing drugs in her apartment painted a damning picture. But as damning as it was, it didn't make things easier for me. Every court hearing, every delay, every smug look she gave when she was brought in for questioning, it all chipped away at whatever pieces of humanity I still clung to. As part of the investigation, Sarah was required to take a drug test. Unsurprisingly, it came back positive, not just for heroin, but for several other substances, including cocaine and amphetamines. It was the final nail in the coffin. The daughter I had once rocked to sleep as a baby, the little girl I had taught to ride a bike, wasn't just a liar and a manipulator, she was an addict and a criminal. Seeing the results didn't shock me, but it hurt. It was one thing to know in your gut that your child is on a destructive path. It's another thing entirely to see it spelled out in black and white. Part of me wanted to feel pity for her, to see her as the victim of her own choices. But that part of me was drowned out by anger. She hadn't just ruined her life. She had tried to ruin mine. My lawyer told me I didn't have to attend every hearing, but I couldn't stay away. I needed to see her face, needed her to know that I wasn't going to let her get away with this without seeing the damage she caused. At one point during the trial, her lawyer argued that Sarah's actions were the result of addiction, that she was not in her right mind when she reported me to the police. I couldn't stay silent, not about this. As I sat there, I knew this wasn't some desperate mistake driven by addiction. It wasn't about weakness or bad judgment. It was intentional. She had never been a family person, never cared about anyone but herself. This wasn't about drugs. It was about revenge. She wanted to hurt me and put me in trouble for kicking her out. That much was clear. But I kept those thoughts to myself, knowing that the truth was already laid bare for everyone to see. There was no need for me to speak. Her actions spoke louder than anything I could say. The trial dragged on for months, delayed repeatedly by procedural nonsense and Sarah's lawyer trying to reduce her charges. Meanwhile, I tried to rebuild the wreckage of my life. People in the neighborhood still whispered when I walked by, some still unsure whether I was truly innocent despite the evidence. My wife seemed to exist in a constant state of denial. "She's sick," she kept saying, like it was a mantra that would make all of this easier to swallow. She didn't mean it. She didn't mean it? I snapped one night after dinner. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just using, she was dealing. She put my name on a report to the police. How the hell do you not mean that? We're her parents, no matter what. Zrania, her voice trembling. "Not anymore," I said coldly, pushing back my chair and leaving the table. When the verdict finally came, it felt more like a formality than a victory. Sarah was found guilty on all charges: possession of narcotics, intent to distribute, and filing false accusations. The judge didn't hold back. However, instead of prison, she was sentenced to serve 8 years in a long-term drug rehabilitation center. The judge believed that addressing her addiction was critical to ensuring she didn't repeat her actions. She showed little emotion as the sentence was read, only giving a slight shrug as if to say, "It is what it is." I wanted to feel relief, but I didn't. The damage was already done. 8 years wouldn't erase the 5 months I spent in a cell. It wouldn't fix the relationships that had been shattered or undo the stain on my reputation. If anything, her conviction felt like the closing chapter of a book I wished I'd never started reading. After the trial, I got a restraining order against Sarah to make sure she could never come near me again. Even when she eventually gets out, I don't want her anywhere near my life. She made her choices, and I made mine. For a while, I couldn't sleep. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, haunted by everything that had happened. My wife, on the other hand, seemed stuck in the past. She started writing Sarah letters in prison, trying to keep some sort of relationship alive. At first, I didn't say anything, but eventually it became too much. "What are you hoping to accomplish?" I asked her one night, when I caught her sealing another envelope. "She's our daughter," she said again. That same broken mantra that had driven me up the wall for months. "She stopped being our daughter the day she put me in cuffs," I replied, my voice cold and sharp. "I don't care what she's going through. I don't care if she gets better. She's out of my life, and that's not changing." That conversation was the tipping point. We were no longer on the same page, no longer even in the same book. My wife clung to the idea of Sarah as the daughter we used to know, the little girl she'd raised, the baby she once held. But that version of Sarah didn't exist anymore. Not to me, and maybe not to anyone. It became clear that our marriage wasn't going to survive this. The trust between us was gone, eroded by months of doubt, anger, and pain. My wife had doubted me when I needed her most, and now she was trying to hold on to a relationship with the person who had destroyed everything we'd built. How could we come back from that? The answer was simple. We couldn't. One night, after another tense argument about Sarah, I finally said it out loud. "I don't think we can keep doing this." My wife looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "You're saying you want to leave?" "I'm saying this isn't working," I said, my voice steady but heavy. "We're not the same people we were before all of this. I don't trust you, and you don't understand me anymore. And honestly, I don't think I can stay in this house, surrounded by everything that reminds me of her." She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I don't want this, but I understand." We agreed to separate a few weeks later. She kept the house, the one place I didn't want to be anymore. I moved into a small apartment across town, far enough to feel like I was starting fresh, but close enough to handle the practicalities of dividing our lives. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The worst part wasn't the physical separation. It was the realization that the life we'd built together had crumbled so completely. We'd spent 2 decades as partners, raising a family, building a home, only for it to fall apart in the wake of our daughter's actions. Sarah's choices hadn't just destroyed my trust in her. They'd destroyed my marriage. The worst part of all this wasn't the jail time or the trial. It was the realization that the life I thought I had was never as strong as I believed. My marriage had been hanging by a thread, and I hadn't even realized it until it was too late. Maybe someday I'll find a way to let go of all this anger. But not today. Today, I just focus on putting one foot in front of the other and keeping Sarah as far away from me as possible. She made her choices, and she'll live with the consequences. But so will I. Story 3. This story is titled, "My fiancé broke up with me after her sister convinced her I wasn't in her league, but she regretted it later and showed up begging at my door." Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Throwaway account because some people know my main, and this whole situation is still pretty fresh. Also typing this on mobile at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep, so sorry if the formatting is garbage. I guess I should start with some background about myself, since that's pretty relevant to how this whole clusterfuck went down. I, 29 male, grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in what you'd call your typical middle-class family. My dad owned this small but successful plumbing business that he built from scratch. Like literally started with just him and a van, and now he's got 15 employees. My mom was this amazing elementary school teacher who everyone in our neighborhood knew and loved. They weren't rich or anything, but they taught me that honest work and smart money management were the keys to a good life. Maybe that's why I ended up becoming a financial advisor. I know. Not exactly the most thrilling career. When I tell people what I do at parties, their eyes usually glaze over faster than a Dunkin' Donut. But honestly, I fucking love my job. There's something really satisfying about helping regular people figure out their finances and plan for their future. Plus, the money's pretty decent, especially after I made partner at my firm last year. So anyway, back in summer 2018, my buddy Mike was having this massive BBQ at his new... You know the type. The grill's going all day, coolers full of craft beer, because we're adults, now LOL, and someone inevitably brings a guitar, even though nobody asked for that. I almost didn't go because I had a bunch of client reports to finish, but Mike literally threatened to drag me there if I tried to bail. That's where I met Sarah. Holy shit, guys. You ever have one of those moments where you see someone across the room and everything else just kind of fades away? That's what happened when I spotted this gorgeous redhead laughing at something by the fire pit. She had these incredible green eyes and was wearing this simple sundress, but somehow managed to outshine everyone else there. Turns out Sarah worked in marketing for this tech startup downtown. She was smart as hell, could talk about literally anything, and had this weird obsession with true crime podcasts that I found weirdly endearing. We ended up talking until like 3 a.m. that night, just sitting on Mike's back porch while everyone else either left or passed out. Things moved pretty fast after that. We moved in together after a year because we were already spending every night at each other's places anyway, so it just made sense financially. Once a financial advisor, always a financial advisor, LMAO. I proposed last summer during a trip to Traverse City. Did the whole romantic beach sunset thing. She cried, I cried, random strangers on the beach cheered. It was perfect. Our life together was, man, it was everything I'd ever wanted. We had this awesome routine going. I'd get up early to make breakfast, learned how to make these insane French toast that Sarah swore was better than her mom's. Her mom agreed BTW. We'd have coffee together, talk about our plans for the day, then head to work. Evenings were for cooking dinner together while dancing to 80s music. She got me hooked on Tears for Fears, or binge-watching whatever new show we'd found. Weekends were the best, though. Sometimes we do these mini road trips to random small towns in Michigan, trying out local restaurants and checking out weird tourist attractions. We found this amazing pie shop in the middle of nowhere that we drive an hour just to visit. Other weekends we'd just stay home, do some gardening. I got really into growing vegetables during COVID, or have friends over for game nights. We were that couple that other people would look at and be like, relationship goals. You know the type. The ones who still actually enjoy spending time together and don't just post about it on social media. We had our arguments, sure, but they were always about stupid stuff like whose turn it was to clean the bathroom or whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It absolutely does, fight me. We had all these plans for the future too. Already picked out wedding venues, started looking at houses in this cute neighborhood near my office, even talked about kids' names, though we agreed to wait a few years on that. Sarah had this whole Pinterest board full of ideas for our dream home. She wanted one of those fancy kitchen islands and a reading nook by a bay window. I was saving up to make it all happen. Looking back now, I guess maybe things were too perfect. You know how they say if something seems too good to be true, it probably is? Yeah, turns out that applies to relationships too. Because right when I thought I had everything figured out, right when all the pieces of my life were finally falling into place, that's when Sarah's sister Polly decided to pay us a surprise visit. Okay, so before I get into the absolute dumpster fire that Polly caused, you need to understand who Polly is. You know those people who make being an influencer their entire personality? That's Polly. But like, multiply that by 1,000 and add a hefty dose of superiority complex. Picture this. While Sarah and I were building our life in Michigan, living in our cozy apartment with our rescue cat, Mr. Whiskers, yeah, basic name, but he came with it. Polly was living what she called her best life in Miami. And by best life, I mean posting daily Instagram stories about her entrepreneur grind while actually living off their parents' money. No shade to people who get help from their parents, but at least be honest about it, you know? Polly was 32 but acted like she was perpetually 21. Her Instagram bio literally said, CEO of Living Life. Yes, with the sparkle emoji. She sold these ridiculously overpriced workout plans online. $299 for a PDF of basic exercises you could find on YouTube for free. But somehow, she had like 50,000 followers who ate up everything she posted. Her content was all boss babe this and create your own reality that. Pure toxic positivity wrapped in a face-tuned package. The thing that really got to me was how different the sisters were when Polly wasn't around. Sarah was this down-to-earth, genuinely funny person who could hold conversations about actual topics. She volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends, knew all our neighbors by name, and would bring soup to our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, whenever she wasn't feeling well. Just a genuinely good person, you know? But man, whenever Polly came around, it was like a switch flipped in Sarah's brain. Suddenly she'd start talking differently, using all these weird influencer phrases like manifest your dreams and align with your truth. She'd get super self-conscious about everything, our apartment, her job, even the way she dressed. One time, she literally cried because we didn't have one of those stupid neon signs that say good vibes only in our living room. I tried to be understanding at first, like I get it. Sibling dynamics can be complicated. Sarah was the youngest of three. Their brother Tom is cool though. He's a high school teacher in Chicago. And Polly had always been the exciting one. While Sarah was getting straight A's in high school, Polly was sneaking out to parties. When Sarah was working her way up in her marketing career, Polly was finding herself in Bali, aka posting bikini pics with inspirational quotes. The real problem started about 6 months before all this went down. Polly had just broken up with her latest boyfriend, some crypto bro named Chad, I shit you not, that was his actual name, and decided she needed to spread her wisdom to Sarah. She started sending these novels of text messages about how marriage was a construct designed to limit female power. and how settling down in your 20s was basically giving up on life. At first, Sarah would just laugh it off. She'd show me the messages, and we'd joke about how ridiculous they were. But then Polly started getting more aggressive. She'd send Sarah links to articles about divorce rates and early marriages, or tag her in Instagram posts about living your truth and not settling. It was like this constant drip of poison, you know? I remember this one specific night, about 2 months before everything fell apart. We were having dinner with Polly during one of her surprise visits. She'd show up randomly claiming she was in the area, even though Miami to Michigan isn't exactly a casual trip. She spent the entire meal talking about her amazing life, the parties, the guys, the networking events, aka more parties. Then she looked at Sarah with this fake, concerned expression and said, "Don't you miss having adventures, sis? Don't you want more than just this?" The way she said this, while gesturing at our apartment, our home that we'd built together, made my blood boil. But Sarah just sat there, pushing her food around her plate, looking like someone had just told her Santa wasn't real. I should have said something then. Should have called Polly out on her manipulative bullshit. But I didn't want to cause drama or make Sarah uncomfortable. Plus, I honestly didn't think Sarah would ever buy into Polly's lifestyle. She'd always been the sensible one, you know? We'd literally spent the weekend before planning our wedding flowers and laughing about how neither of us wanted anything too Instagram-worthy. God, I was so fucking naive. The worst part? Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs. The way Sarah started spending more time on Instagram. How she'd get quiet after her phone calls with Polly. The sudden interest in meditation apps and manifestation journals. It was like watching someone slowly get pulled into a cult, but the cult leader was their own sister. This part is actually pretty hard to write, even months later. But you guys deserve the full story, so here goes. It was a Tuesday in April. The weather was finally starting to warm up in Michigan, and I remember being stupidly happy about being able to wear just a light jacket to work. The night before, Sarah and I had stayed up late planning our honeymoon. We were thinking about doing this road trip through the Pacific Northwest, hitting up all these little towns and national parks. She was excited about finding these weird roadside attractions, like the world's largest ball of twine or whatever. Just typical dorky couple stuff, you know? That morning started so normal it hurts to think about now. I got up at 6:30 like always, let Mr. Whiskers out of our bedroom. He has this thing about sleeping at our feet, and started making breakfast. It was French toast morning, Sarah's favorite. I'd perfected this recipe over the years. Thick-cut brioche bread, lots of cinnamon, a splash of vanilla, and this maple syrup we'd gotten from this tiny farm in Vermont during our last road trip. Sarah came down wearing this blue sweater I'd gotten her for Christmas. She seemed fine. Tired maybe, but it was Tuesday morning. Who isn't tired? We ate breakfast together, talked about some show we'd started watching the night before. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and headed out to work. I remember thinking about how lucky I was, how perfect everything was. Funny how life likes to punch you in the gut right when you're feeling on top of the world, huh? I had a pretty normal day at work, had a couple of client meetings, grabbed lunch with a coworker, sent Sarah a few random memes that made me think of her. She left them on read, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. Around 3 p.m., she texted saying she was heading home early because she wasn't feeling great. I offered to pick up soup from that Vietnamese place she likes, but she just replied with, "No thanks." Should have known something was up then. Sarah never turns down POO when she's sick. When I got home around 6, the apartment felt wrong. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and can just tell something bad is about to happen? Like the air is too thick or something? Yeah, it was like that. Sarah was sitting on our couch, already halfway through a bottle of wine. She never day drinks unless something's seriously wrong. There was this empty look in her eyes that I'd never seen before, and she wouldn't look directly at me. Mr. Whiskers, who usually runs to greet me at the door, was nowhere to be seen. "We need to talk," she said, and my stomach just dropped. Nobody in the history of relationships has ever said, "We need to talk," and followed it up with good news. I sat down across from her, still wearing my work clothes, still holding my laptop bag like some kind of shield. "What's going on?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. The signs had been there, I just hadn't wanted to see them. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, taking another big sip of wine. "About life, about what I want, about everything." She was using these weird hand gestures while she talked, something she'd picked up from Polly. And I don't think I can do this anymore. "Do what?" I asked, like a fucking idiot, as if I didn't know exactly what she meant. "This, United States, the wedding, all of it." She waved her hand around our apartment, at all the little things we'd collected together over the stupid ceramic penguin we'd found at a thrift store, the photos from our trips, the wedding planning binder sitting on the coffee table. I feel like I'm suffocating. Then came the part that really killed me. She started talking about how she'd been talking to Polly a lot lately, how Polly had opened her eyes to what she was missing out on, how she needed to find herself, before she could settle down. It was like listening to someone read off a script of every basic breakup cliche, but with Polly's influencer buzzwords mixed in. She kept using phrases like living authentically and aligning with my truth. At one point, she actually said, I need to understand who Sarah is before I can be Sarah plus someone else. I wanted to scream, you are Sarah. You're the Sarah who loves true crime podcasts and hates cilantro and cries at dog food commercials. But I didn't say any of them. I just sat there, watching 5 years of my life crumble while Sarah talked about personal growth and spiritual journeys like she was reading off Polly's Instagram caption. The worst part? She'd already packed a bag. While I was at work, thinking about what kind of soup to bring my sick fiancé, she was packing up her life into a suitcase. She was moving in with Polly temporarily while she figured things out. Before she left, she took off her engagement ring, the one that had belonged to my grandmother, and just left it on the coffee table like it was nothing, like it was some piece of costume jewelry she'd gotten tired of. After she left, I just sat there for hours, staring at that ring. Mr. Whiskers finally came out from wherever he'd been hiding and curled up in my lap, purring like he knew I needed it. The French toast dishes from that morning were still in the sink. Her coffee mug, the one with little foxes on it that I'd gotten her for our first Christmas together, was still in the dishwasher. You know what's really fucked up? That night, while I was sitting there trying to figure out how my entire life had just imploded, Sarah was already posting on her Instagram story. Nothing direct, just one of those vague quotes about choosing yourself and starting new chapters. She'd even used one of those sunset filters. Real classy. After Sarah left, I went through all the stages of grief in like 48 hours. First came denial. I literally sat on our couch until 4 a.m., convinced she'd come back and say it was all a mistake. Then came anger. I may or may not have thrown her stupid good vibes only coffee mug against the wall. Sorry, not sorry. Depression hit hard. I called in sick to work for 2 days and basically just existed on the couch with Mr. Whiskers and leftover Chinese food. But then something weird happened. You know how Netflix always asks, are you still watching? After you've been binging shows for too long? Well, when I clicked yes for like the 100th time, I noticed something. Sarah was still logged into our shared account, and under continue watching, there was some show I'd never heard of, being watched at 2 a.m. at some dude's place. Yeah, let that sink in. My fiancé, who less than a week ago was planning our wedding and honeymoon, was already Netflix and chilling with someone else. And because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment, and maybe because I'd had a few beers, I decided to do some digging. First stop, Instagram. Sarah's main account was pretty much what you'd expect. Lots of inspirational quotes about new beginnings and finding yourself. Some pictures of her and Polly at various Miami clubs. The usual post-breakup social media performance. But then I remembered something. Sarah had this weird habit of making separate accounts for different things. She had one just for posting about books she'd read, another for her attempts at cooking. So I tried a hunch. You know how when you create a new Instagram account, it suggests people to follow? Well, if you use the same email address for multiple accounts, they're all kind of linked. It took me about 10 minutes of trying different combinations of her usual username, but holy shit guys, I found it. A whole-ass secret Instagram account. And let me tell you, what I found made me realize our entire relationship had been a lie for months. This account was private, but she'd used the same password she used for everything. Her mom's name plus her birth year? I'd told her a million times to use better passwords. What I found was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Except the car was my relationship, and it had actually been on fire for months without me noticing. The account was full of direct messages between her and Polly, going back to January. They'd been planning this whole escape from suburban life thing like it was some kind of prison break. Polly would send her these long messages about how she was so proud of Sarah for finally waking up and choosing freedom. There were screenshots of conversations with this guy Jake, some finance bro Polly had introduced her to at a party back in February when Sarah was supposedly visiting her parents. The messages between Sarah and Jake made me physically sick. Nothing explicitly cheating, but lots of what-if conversations and flirty little exchanges. What if we'd met first? What if you weren't engaged? Meanwhile, I'm at home growing tomatoes in our garden and planning surprise date nights like a fucking idiot. But here's the real kicker. All those times Sarah was working late or having girls' night with coworkers in the months before she left, she was actually on video calls with Polly and her Miami friends, planning her new fabulous life. They had this whole group chat called Sarah's Liberation, where they'd talk shit about me and our boring life together. You want to know how detailed this planning was? They had a whole spreadsheet, an actual fucking spreadsheet with tabs for everything. Clubs to visit, guys to meet. Yeah, Jake wasn't the only one. Even a glow-up schedule for Sarah with appointments for hair extensions, nail maintenance, and something called tooth gems. Had to Google that one. Apparently it's like jewelry for your teeth. One conversation from March really stuck with me. Sarah had posted a picture of us at my nephew's birthday party. We were both covered in cake because my 5-year-old nephew thought it would be hilarious to start a food fight. We were laughing, happy, just genuinely enjoying life. Polly commented on it in their private chat. Ugh, you look so basic here. Can't wait until you're living your best life with us instead of playing house in the suburbs. Sarah's response? Just a few more months of pretending. A few more months of pretending. Those words kept echoing in my head. While I was planning our future, she was planning her escape. While I was looking at houses in good school districts, because she'd always talked about wanting kids, she was looking at party dresses and making plans with other guys. The worst part? There were pictures of her trying on wedding dresses with her mom, right around the same time she was messaging Jake about how confused she was about her feeling. Pictures of her crying happy tears in this beautiful white dress, captioned, "Can't wait to marry my best friend," posted the same day she was in Jake's DMs talking about how she felt trapped in our relationship. I found myself going through old photos of us, trying to spot the moment where it all changed. Was she faking it in that picture from New Year's, where she's looking at me like I'm her whole world? What about our anniversary dinner in March? The weekend trip to the lake in April? When did my fiancée become such a good actress? The more I dug, the more it felt like I was reading about a stranger. This wasn't the Sarah I knew, the girl who cried at ASPCA commercials and spent 3 hours making a get well card for our elderly neighbor. This was some poly-influenced pod person who talked about vibes and energy and treated our relationship like it was some kind of temporary pit stop on her way to a better life. For about 3 months after Sarah left, I had to watch their whole Miami adventure unfold on social media like some twisted reality show. Sarah and Polly were living their best life. All designer outfits, rooftop parties, and fancy restaurants. Every post was tagged with something like number living authentically, or number choosing me, or my personal favorite, number no regrets. Jake was a constant presence in their posts, though they tried to be subtle about it. You know the type. Those accidental group shots where he's conveniently next to Sarah, or stories where you can hear his voice in the background. They thought they were being so slick, but it was about as subtle as a drunk elephant in a china shop. Sarah had completely transformed herself into Polly 2.0. Gone was the girl who used to spend Sundays in her pajamas reading true crime books. Now she was all crop tops and hair extensions, posting daily affirmations, and trying to start her own wellness coaching business, aka selling the same overpriced workout plans as Polly. She even started talking with that weird influencer vocal fry that Polly uses. It was like watching someone have a quarter-life crisis in real time. But then, about 3 months into their fabulous new life, something amazing happened. I was scrolling through Instagram one morning, drinking my coffee and mentally preparing for another day of pretending to be okay, when I saw it. A post from Polly that would change everything. There she was, standing on some beach in Malibu, not Miami, this detail becomes important, wearing a white bikini and holding up her left hand to show off this massive engagement ring. The caption read, "He asked, and my soul said yes. Ready to start forever with my twin flame." Now, you might be thinking, okay, so Polly got engaged, so what? Well, here's where it gets good. Tech Bro Tyler, yes, that was his actual handle, was this startup founder from Seattle who Polly had apparently been dating in secret for the past 6 months. And the best part? They were moving to Seattle. Like, immediately. The same sister who had spent months preaching about how marriage was a societal construct and settling down was basic, had been secretly planning her own wedding the entire time she was convincing Sarah to blow up her life. You really can't make this stuff up. Sarah found out about it the same way everyone else did, through Instagram. According to my friend Mike, who's still friends with Sarah's brother Tom, she had a complete meltdown. She called Polly screaming about betrayal and hypocrisy, but Polly just hit her with the same spiritual buzzwords she'd been using on Sarah. I'm just following my truth, and the universe has a plan. But wait, it gets better. Remember Jake, Mr. Perfect, who was supposedly so much better than boring old me? Well, turns out Jake had been following his truth with about 3 other girls the whole time he was seeing Sarah. One of them found out about the others and made a whole TikTok exposing him, complete with screenshots and everything. It went semi-viral in their Miami social circle. Sarah tried to play it cool online, posting stuff like, "Everything happens for a reason," and "Trust the journey." But behind the scenes, she was falling apart. Without Polly there to bankroll their fabulous lifestyle, oh yeah, forgot to mention, Polly had been paying for most of their partying. Sarah was struggling. Turns out those wellness coaching plans weren't selling as well as she'd hoped. She had to move out of Polly's Miami apartment, since Polly was selling it, couldn't afford the lifestyle she'd gotten used to, and was basically stranded in a city where she had no real friends, just a bunch of party acquaintances who disappeared real quick when the free drinks dried up. The final cherry on top? One night, probably after a few too many drinks, Sarah posted this long, rambling Instagram story about how some people aren't who they pretend to be and how true sisters don't abandon sisters. She tagged Polly in it. Polly's response? She blocked Sarah. On everything. Just like that, the whole house of cards came tumbling down. All those inspirational quotes about choosing yourself and living your best life suddenly disappeared from Sarah's feed, replaced by vague posts about healing and learning hard lessons. I watched all of this unfold from the safety of my couch, usually with Mr. Whiskers on my lap. Was it petty of me to feel satisfaction? Maybe. But after everything they'd put me through, watching karma do its thing felt pretty damn good. I'd finally started putting myself back together. Started going to the gym again. Turns out anger is a great pre-workout. Got back into my old hobbies, finally finished restoring that vintage record player I'd been working on, and even started enjoying my own company. Mr. Whiskers and I had our routine down. Morning coffee on the balcony, work, maybe some video games or a book in the evening. It wasn't exciting by Instagram standards, but it was peaceful. That's when I met Emma. And no, it wasn't some rom-com moment where we locked eyes across a crowded coffee shop or anything like that. It was actually at this really boring tax law conference in Chicago. I was there representing my firm, trying not to fall asleep during a presentation about recent changes in retirement account regulations, when someone asked this really intelligent question about Roth IRA conversion. I turned around to see who asked it, and there was this woman in a perfectly tailored navy suit with these smart glasses and this subtle undercut that somehow made her look both professional and badass at the same time. During the break, I worked up the courage to talk to her about her question. Yes, I'm enough of a finance nerd that I used tax law as a pickup line. Don't judge. Emma turned out to be this brilliant tax attorney who could talk about fiscal policy with the same enthusiasm that most people reserve for their favorite TV shows. But here's the thing. She was also funny as hell. Like, actually funny, not Instagram caption funny. She had this dry wit that could make even the most boring tax regulations sound entertaining. We ended up ditching the afternoon sessions and spending hours at this little cafe near the conference center, talking about everything from tax brackets to true crime podcasts. Turns out we're both obsessed with the same ones. It was just easy. No pretense, no performance, just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. When I got back to Michigan, we started texting, then video calling, then taking turns making the 3-hour drive between our cities every other weekend. Emma was different from anyone I'd ever dated. She was ambitious, yeah, but not in that artificial hashtag girlboss way. She worked her ass off because she genuinely loved what she did, not because she was trying to prove anything to anyone. The first time she came to my place, she brought her own coffee bean, she's a total coffee snob, and spent the morning teaching me how to use this fancy pour-over method she swears by. We made a complete mess of my kitchen, but it was the most fun I'd had in months. She didn't even ask why I had a cat tree but no wedding photos on the walls anymore. She just helped me clean up the coffee grounds and suggested we try making French toast next, complete with orange zest, because apparently she's a breakfast perfectionist too. That's why when Sarah showed up at my door one rainy night in October, I wasn't even angry anymore, just tired. She looked exactly like you'd expect someone who just had their perfect life implode to look. Mascara running, hair a mess, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice shaking. Classic Sarah timing. She'd probably seen my recent Instagram post with Emma at my cousin's wedding and decided now was the time to have a heart-to-heart. I let her in because, well, I'm not a complete asshole. Mr. Whiskers took one look at her and promptly disappeared into the bedroom. Cats really do have the best judgment, don't they? She sat on the couch, the new one I'd bought to replace the one we'd picked out together, and started crying. What followed was the most predictable conversation ever. How she'd made a huge mistake. How Polly had manipulated her. How Jake was a player. Shocking, I know. How she missed our life together. How she'd been doing a lot of thinking and realized what she'd thrown away. The old me would have eaten this up, would have seen it as a sign that everything could go back to normal. But sitting there, listening to her talk, all I could think about was how Emma and I had spent the previous weekend building this ridiculous blanket fort in my living room because it was raining and we were bored. How we'd laid there talking about our future, real talks about career goals and life plans, not just Instagram-worthy moments. "I think we could try again," Sarah said finally, looking at me with those green eyes that used to make my heart skip a beat. "I'm different now. I know what I want." That's when I got up, walked to my phone that was charging on the kitchen counter, and pulled up the photo from my cousin's wedding. It was a candid shot of Emma and me laughing at something my drunk uncle had said. Emma's head was thrown back in genuine laughter, her hand on my chest, while I looked at her like she was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I showed it to Sarah. "I'm different now too," I said quietly, "and I know what I want." The look on her face, it was like watching someone finally understand that some things can't be fixed with a carefully crafted apology and an Instagram-worthy reconciliation moment. She started crying again, but this time I didn't feel the need to comfort her. "You should go," I said, not unkindly. "It's getting late, and Emma's coming over for breakfast tomorrow. She's teaching me how to make croissants from scratch." As Sarah walked to the door, she paused and turned around. "Are you happy?" she asked, like she couldn't quite believe it was possible to be happy without her. I thought about Emma, about our stupid coffee experiments and blanket forts, about how she sends me terrible puns in the middle of workdays and actually listens when I geek out about financial regulations. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." After she left, I texted Emma. "You won't believe who just showed up." Her response was perfect. "Do we need to make stress croissants tonight instead of waiting for morning? I can be there in 3 hours with emergency butter." That's when I knew for sure. Sometimes the worst things that happen to you end up leading you to the best things in your life. Story 4. My fiancé sneered. "My ex proposed to me and I said yes. So I kicked her out. But when she found out her ex cheated on her, she came crawling back. So I taught her a lesson she will never forget." All right, guys, this is going to be a long one, but I need to get this shit off my chest because what the hell just happened to my life? So I, 31 male, work as an electrician. Been doing it for about 8 years. Decent money, steady work. Was engaged to Sasha, 29 female, who's a physical therapist at some fancy sports medicine clinic downtown. We'd been together 4 years total, living together for the last 2. Got engaged back in February. Everything seemed fine after that. Started talking wedding plans. She wanted fall next year. Big church thing. Reception at a country club. I was cool with it. My parents loved her. Hers seemed to like me. Everything moving forward like it should. But then this happened. I'm on a job site all day, running new electrical for this office building downtown. Long day, dirty work, crawling through ceilings and dealing with ancient wiring that should have been replaced decades ago. Came home around 6 p.m. covered in dust and insulation, wanting nothing more than a hot shower and some food. Sasha's car was in the driveway, which was weird, because Tuesdays she usually stayed late for administrative stuff. Some monthly meeting with the other therapists or billing paperwork. I never paid much attention to the details. Walked in, and she's sitting on the couch, still in her work clothes, but she looked different. Excited? Nervous? That look people get when they're about to tell you news, but they're not sure how you'll react. Like when someone's pregnant or got a promotion or won the lottery. I dropped my tool bag by the door, and she immediately says, "Alex, can we talk? I need to tell you something." That tone. The tone women get when they're about to drop something heavy on you. "Okay, what's up?" She took a deep breath and hit me with it. "Jonathan proposed to me today." Just like that. No build-up, no explanation, just straight to the point. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. Some weird story from work or something she saw on social media. But she wasn't smiling, just staring at me with this serious expression, waiting for my reaction. That's when my brain started catching up. Jonathan, her high school boyfriend from like 10 years ago. I'd heard stories about him over the years, but figured he was ancient history. When I asked since when she was seeing her ex, she told me she'd been meeting with him for a while. Meeting with him. Not ran into him at the store or he reached out on Facebook. Meeting. Like planned, scheduled meetings. Since March, she said. 2 months. She'd been secretly meeting her high school ex for 2 months, right after we got engaged, while I was working overtime to pay for a wedding ring, while we were looking at venues and talking about our future together, and when he proposed, she said yes. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Just sitting there staring at this woman I was planning to spend my life with. This woman wearing my engagement ring while telling me she'd accepted another man's proposal. Everything from the past 2 months suddenly made perfect sense. The late nights weren't patient care. She was meeting Jonathan. The secretive phone calls weren't work-related. She was talking to Jonathan. The new clothes and makeup weren't for professionalism. She was dressing up for Jonathan. The emotional distance wasn't cold feet about our engagement. She was falling for someone else. I told her, "Take off my ring." "Alex, let me explain." "Take off the ring, Sasha." She slowly pulled it off her finger and set it on the coffee table between us. 3 months of my salary sitting there like it meant nothing. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out." "Alex, please, let's talk about this." 1 hour. She tried to explain, but there was nothing to explain. She'd made her choice, and it wasn't me. Called my sister while sitting in my truck, hands shaking from anger and shock. Evelyn wanted to come over, but I just needed Sasha gone. Needed her out of my house, out of my life, out of my future. 45 minutes later, she came outside with 2 suitcases, tried to say we could still be friends eventually. Friends? After destroying 4 years of my life for some high school nostalgia trip. She drove away, and that was it. 4 years over in one conversation. Went back inside, and the house felt completely empty, like all the life had been sucked out of it. Her ring was still on the coffee table where she'd left it. I picked it up, put it back in the box, stuck it in my dresser drawer. Didn't know what else to do with the thing. The next few days were absolutely brutal. Took time off work because I couldn't focus on anything electrical. Almost shocked myself twice on Tuesday because my head was completely somewhere else. When you're dealing with 480 volts, being distracted isn't just stupid, it's dangerous. My foreman sent me home after I nearly walked into a ladder for the third time. House felt like a tomb. Every corner had some memory of Sasha attached to it. The coffee mug she always used sitting in the cabinet. Her favorite blanket still folded on the back of the couch. Little things you don't notice until someone's gone and suddenly they're everywhere, mocking you. But here's where it gets really messed up. Her family started reaching out within 24 hours. First was a text from her mom. Alex, I know this is hard, but Sasha has found her soulmate. Jonathan has always been the love of her life. I hope you can understand and be happy for them. Be happy for them. 4 years of my life, and she wants me to be happy that her daughter ditched me for some high school memory. Then her dad called. Left this long voicemail about how sometimes these things happen for a reason. How Sasha and Jonathan belong together because they have real history and deep connection that goes back to when they were young. Said I seemed like a good guy, but sometimes love just finds a way. And this was meant to be. Real history. Like the years I spent with his daughter meant nothing compared to some teenage romance from a decade ago. Her sister texted me too. Some garbage about how she'd never seen Sasha as happy as she was with Jonathan. How they were perfect for each other, and true love always wins in the end. Like I was some villain standing in the way of their fairy tale reunion instead of the guy who got completely screwed over. The worst part was how they all acted like I should be grateful. Like I should thank them for letting me know that I was apparently just keeping Sasha's seat warm until her real soulmate came back around. Like I was supposed to graciously step aside and wish them well. Not one of them apologized. Not one acknowledged that what Sasha did was messed up. They were all just celebrating her finding true love without giving a shit about the collateral damage. I blocked every single one of them on everything. Social media, phone numbers, email addresses. Didn't need their fake sympathy or twisted logic poisoning my headspace while I was trying to process what happened. My parents, on the other hand, were devastated. Mom actually cried when I told her the whole story. She'd been looking forward to having Sasha as a daughter-in-law, had already started planning outfit ideas for the wedding. Dad just got quiet and angry, kept asking if I wanted him to drive over and have a conversation with Jonathan. Had to talk him out of that. Last thing I needed was my 58-year-old father getting arrested for assault because he was defending my honor or whatever. Though part of me appreciated that he was ready to throw hands for his son. My sister Evelyn became my lifeline through all this. She'd show up every couple days with takeout food, making sure I was eating something besides whatever random crap I had in the pantry. Sat with me while I vented about the whole situation, didn't try to fix everything or offer relationship advice. Just listened and agreed that Sasha was a piece of shit. Best part about Evelyn was that she wasn't surprised by any of it. Said she'd been getting weird vibes from Sasha for months, but didn't want to say anything without proof. Mentioned how Sasha would get this distant look whenever someone mentioned commitment or marriage. Like her mind was somewhere else entirely. Evelyn also helped me start going through Sasha's leftover stuff. Amazing how much crap someone accumulates in 4 years. Hair products in the bathroom, random clothes that didn't make it into her emergency packing session, books and magazines scattered around the house. We boxed it all up and I dropped it off at her sister's place without saying a word. Work eventually helped get my mind off things. My coworkers knew something major had happened, but nobody pried. Construction guys aren't really into discussing feelings, which was perfect. The engagement announcement came about 3 weeks later. Professional photos at some park downtown, both of them looking happy as hell. Her ring was definitely bigger than mine, which probably shouldn't have bothered me but did. Classic move. Had to one-up the ex-fiancé even though his own relationship had imploded. Comments on that post were even worse. Meant to be. True love always finds a way. So happy you found each other again. Like they were celebrating some beautiful love story instead of the wreckage of my relationship. Started wondering if maybe I dodged a bullet. Anyone who could throw away 4 years for some high school nostalgia probably wasn't marriage material anyway. Still hurt like hell, but at least I found out before the wedding, instead of 5 years and 2 kids down the road. Evelyn kept reminding me that this said everything about Sasha's character and nothing about mine. That I deserved someone who wouldn't even consider leaving, let alone actually do it. Someone who saw commitment as something valuable instead of something disposable when a better option showed up. She was right, but logic doesn't make it hurt less when someone you love decides you're not worth keeping. Stopped looking at social media after the engagement announcement. Figured whatever happened next in their fairy tale romance wasn't my business anymore. Had to focus on putting my own life back together instead of watching them build theirs on the ruins of ours. Been doing good these past few months. Work's been steady, picked up some lucrative side jobs, finally got my head screwed back on straight after the whole engagement disaster. Then I got a text yesterday that made me question if I was living in some alternate reality where people have completely lost their minds. Sasha, the woman who destroyed our 4-year relationship for her high school ex, had the absolute balls to ask me for money for their wedding. I'm not even kidding. Let me break this down because the audacity is so unreal I'm still trying to process it. It was a Tuesday afternoon and my phone buzzes with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Took me a second to realize it was Sasha because I'd blocked her on everything months ago. Apparently, she got a new phone or was using someone else's to contact me. The message started innocent enough. Hey Alex, hope you're doing well. Was wondering if we could talk about something important. My first instinct was to delete it and block the number. Nothing good ever comes from exes reaching out, especially ones who left you for someone else. But curiosity got the better of me, and I figured whatever she wanted couldn't make my life any worse than she already had. So I responded, asking what she wanted to talk about. Her next message made my jaw drop. She said she and Jonathan were planning their wedding for next month and were coming up short on funds. Asked if I could help them out with some money to cover the difference. Not a loan, mind you. Just straight up asking for cash to marry the guy she left me for. I had to read it 3 times before it sank in. This woman broke our engagement, destroyed 4 years of my life, chose another man over me, and then had the nerve to ask me to help pay for their wedding. The wedding that was supposed to be ours before she decided Jonathan was more important. But wait, it gets better. Her follow-up text said, Jonathan doesn't know I'm asking you for money, so don't worry about that. Like the fact that she was hiding this from her fiancé was supposed to make me feel better about the whole situation. Like I should be relieved that at least she wasn't telling him about our conversation. The sheer audacity of it all was breathtaking. She thought so little of me, had so little respect for what we'd been through, that asking me to fund her new relationship seemed like a reasonable request. In her mind, I was apparently just some ATM she could access when times got tough. I sat there staring at my phone for probably 10 minutes, trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. Maybe Jonathan was testing me, or her friends were messing with both of us. But no, the tone was completely serious. She genuinely thought this was something I might consider doing. Part of me wanted to call her and scream about how insane this request was. How completely delusional she'd have to be to think I'd give her money for anything, let alone her wedding to the guy she chose over me. But that would have given her the reaction she was probably expecting. Instead, I asked her why she thought I'd want to help with their wedding expenses. Her response was even more unbelievable than the original request. She said we'd been together for 4 years, and she knew I was a good person who wanted people to be happy. That even though things didn't work out between us, she hoped I'd want her to have the wedding of her dreams. Because that's what good people do. They support their ex's happiness, even when it comes at their own expense. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost insulting, trying to guilt me into paying for their wedding by appealing to my character, making it seem like refusing would make me a bad person instead of someone with basic self-respect. Then she mentioned how much I'd made on recent side jobs, which creeped me out because how the hell did she know about my work situation? Either she'd been asking mutual friends about me, or doing some social media stalking to figure out my financial situation. Both options were pretty disturbing. She also brought up how Jonathan's construction business was struggling right now, and they'd already put deposits down on venues and vendors they couldn't afford to lose. Said they just needed a few thousand to make everything work, and she'd always remember how I helped make their special day possible, a few $1,000s, to pay for the wedding that was supposed to be ours, from the guy she dumped to marry someone else. I finally responded and told her she had to be out of her goddamn mind if she thought I'd give her a single penny for anything, especially her wedding. That asking your ex-fiancé to fund your new relationship was probably the most tone-deaf thing I'd ever heard of. Her response was immediate and predictable. She got defensive and said she was just asking because she knew I cared about her happiness, that she thought I was mature enough to move past our breakup and help out as a friend, because apparently destroying someone's life entitles you to their continued financial support. I told her to lose my number and never contact me again, that if she was short on wedding money, maybe she should ask her family who were so supportive of her decision to leave me. Or better yet, maybe Jonathan should figure out how to afford his own wedding instead of having his fiancée beg money from her ex. She tried one more time saying I was being vindictive and holding grudges instead of moving on like an adult. That helping them would show I was truly over our relationship and wish them well. More manipulation disguised as relationship advice. Blocked the number and went back to my day, but I couldn't stop thinking about the sheer balls it took to make that request. Months after destroying our relationship, she thought I'd be willing to bankroll her new one. Like I was some charitable organization dedicated to funding her happiness, regardless of how she treated me. The worst part was how casual she was about it. No acknowledgement of how inappropriate the request was. No apology for putting me in that position. No recognition that maybe asking your ex-fiancé for wedding money wasn't exactly normal behavior. Just entitled expectation that I'd want to help because we used to care about each other. Like our history gave her permanent access to my wallet whenever she needed extra cash. Makes me wonder what other boundaries she'd be willing to cross if money got tight. Would she ask me to babysit their kids someday? Help with mortgage payments? Co-sign a loan when Jonathan's business fails completely? The entitlement is absolutely staggering. 4 years together, and she learned nothing about who I am as a person if she thought I'd fund her wedding to another man. At least now I know for sure that leaving was the best thing that ever happened to our relationship. Can't imagine being married to someone with such a warped sense of appropriate behavior. Well, turns out fairy tales don't always have happy endings. Got the full story from my sister Evelyn last week. She'd been hearing things through mutual friends but waited until she had all the details before filling me in. Smart move because this is some serious drama that I'm honestly glad to be watching from the sidelines. Sasha and Jonathan's perfect reunion lasted exactly 6 months before everything went to shit. Apparently, Jonathan's been cheating on her since pretty much day one. Not just casual hookups either. Full-blown relationships with multiple women at the same time. Guy was running 3 different girlfriends who all thought they were his only one. Real piece of work. This Jonathan. One of them found out about the others and decided to blow up his whole operation. She contacted Sasha directly with screenshots of conversations, photos from dates, even videos of them together. The kind of evidence that leaves no room for denial or bullshit excuses. When Sasha confronted Jonathan about it, he didn't even try to lie. Just told her he wasn't ready to be tied down, and she should have known better than to expect monogamy from him. Like cheating was just part of his personality that she should have accepted from the beginning. But here's where it gets really messed up. The cheating wasn't even the worst part of this disaster. They got into a huge fight at his apartment over the whole thing. Started with yelling and accusations. Typical relationship drama when someone gets caught red-handed. But then Jonathan completely lost his shit when Sasha said she was leaving him. He grabbed her hard enough to leave finger marks on both her arms. When she tried to walk out, he shoved her into the wall so hard she hit her head and ended up with a black eye. Neighbors heard the commotion and called the cops. Evelyn said this wasn't the first time he'd gotten physical either. Apparently, Sasha had been covering up bruises for weeks, making excuses about bumping into things or accidents at work. Classic abuse victim behavior that nobody really noticed until it was too obvious to ignore. The whole timeline is incredible when you think about it. 6 months ago, she left our stable 4-year relationship because she couldn't say no to her first love, threw away everything we'd built together for some high school fantasy that existed only in her head. What she got instead was 6 months of lies, cheating, and abuse from a guy who never gave a damn about her. Jonathan saw an opportunity to have some fun with his old girlfriend and took it. Consequences be damned. Soon as the novelty wore off, he showed his true colors. Part of me feels bad for her because nobody deserves to get hit, no matter how stupid their decisions were. But mostly I feel vindicated as hell. She chose excitement over stability, passion over trust, her first love over the guy who actually loved her. Well, she got exactly what she chose. Hope those 6 months of true love were worth destroying our 4 years together. The really crazy part is how Jonathan's handling the whole situation. Instead of trying to make amends or get help for his anger issues, he's doubling down on being a complete jerk. Told mutual friends that Sasha was too clingy and dramatic, that the relationship just wasn't working out for him. No mention of the cheating or the violence, just painting himself as the victim of some crazy ex-girlfriend who couldn't handle his free spirit. Classic abuser move. Make yourself look like the reasonable one while your victim deals with the aftermath of your bullshit. Sasha's apparently staying with her parents and dealing with the reality that her perfect soulmate turned out to be a piece of shit. The same parents who were so supportive of her decision to leave me are now watching their daughter pick up the pieces of her life. Her family's suddenly not so excited about Jonathan anymore. Funny how getting cheated on and abused changes people's perspective on someone's character. Where are all those comments about true love finding a way now? The same family that celebrated Sasha's choice to dump me for her high school ex is now dealing with the consequences of that decision. Suddenly, Jonathan's not the perfect man they thought he was when he was stealing someone else's fiancée. Evelyn also mentioned that people have been asking about me lately. Mutual friends who remember how Sasha left and are wondering how I'm handling all this drama. Most of them seem to realize now that I was the stable option she threw away for this disaster. Told Evelyn to let them know I'm doing great and have completely moved on with my life, which is true. Started seeing someone new a few months ago and things are going really well. Her name's Jade and she's nothing like Sasha, which is exactly what I needed. Jade actually knows about my past with Sasha, but doesn't make it weird or competitive, just acknowledges that what happened sucked and focuses on building something good between us instead of dwelling on old drama. Complete opposite of the mind games and emotional manipulation I dealt with before. We've been talking it slow and making sure we're both ready before making any big decisions. Novel concept after watching Sasha blow up her life for some fantasy reunion. The contrast between my current situation and the chaos Sasha's dealing with is pretty stark. I'm building something stable with someone who actually wants to be with me, while she's learning the hard way that excitement doesn't last when it's built on bullshit. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well while your ex's life falls apart from their own bad choices. Sasha wanted passion and excitement over boring old stability. Well, she got plenty of excitement, just not the kind she was hoping for. Guess now who's been trying to crawl back into my life ever since. Started about 2 weeks after Evelyn told me what happened. My phone began ringing from numbers I didn't recognize. At first I figured it was work calls or spam, so I'd let them go to voicemail. Big mistake. First voicemail was Sasha's voice, and she sounded like absolute shit. Crying, voice all shaky, barely getting words out between sobs. Said she needed to talk to me about everything that happened, that she'd made a huge mistake and really needed my help right now. Deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Whatever crisis she was having wasn't my problem anymore. She'd made her choice 8 months ago when she picked Jonathan over me. Living with the consequences of that decision was on her, not me. But the calls kept coming. Different numbers every time, like she was borrowing phones from friends or using those temporary number apps. Sometimes multiple calls in one day, always going straight to voicemail, since I wasn't answering unknown numbers anymore. The voicemails got more desperate each time. Started with apologies about how sorry she was for everything that happened between us, how she realized now that what we had was real and special, and she'd thrown it away for something that turned out to be completely fake. Then they shifted to talking about Jonathan and what he'd put her through, how he'd lied to her from day one, cheated with multiple women, made her feel worthless and stupid for believing in their relationship, how he'd gotten violent when she tried to leave, and she was scared of what he might do next. The messages kept escalating. She started talking about how she understood now that I was the good guy all along, how Jonathan had shown her what real love wasn't, and it made her realize what she'd lost when she left me. How she'd been so stupid to think teenage feelings were more important than actual adult love. Classic manipulation tactics. Paint herself as the victim who'd learned her lesson. Make me out to be the hero she'd been too blind to appreciate. Try to guilt me into feeling responsible for helping her through this crisis she'd created for herself. Then came the messages about wanting to try again. How she knew she'd hurt me, but people make mistakes. And couldn't we work past this together? How she was a different person now. Someone who understood what really mattered in a relationship. Different person. Same woman who'd been sneaking around with her ex for months while planning our wedding. Same person who'd chosen excitement over stability, and then acted surprised when excitement turned out to be dangerous. The voicemail started getting longer and more detailed. She'd go on for minutes about specific things she missed about our relationship. How safe she'd felt with me. How I'd never made her doubt herself or worry about other women. How she'd taken all of that for granted until Jonathan showed her what the opposite looked like. She talked about our apartment, how she missed coming home to someone who was actually happy to see her, how Jonathan's place always felt temporary and unwelcoming, like she was just visiting instead of building a life with someone. Some of the voicemails were angry instead of sad, accusing me of being cold and heartless for not responding to someone who was clearly in crisis, saying I was holding grudges instead of being mature enough to help someone I used to care about. Those ones actually made me laugh. The same woman who destroyed our relationship was now mad that I wouldn't drop everything to rescue her from the mess she'd created. Like I owed her emotional support after she'd chosen someone else over me. The calls started coming at weird hours too. Late at night when she was probably drunk and feeling sorry for herself. Early in the morning when she'd wake up and remember her life was screwed. Middle of the day when something reminded her of our relationship. Always the same themes though. Started carrying my phone on silent just to avoid hearing it ring constantly. Jade noticed I was getting stressed about something and asked what was going on. Told her about the calls, and she suggested I just change my number entirely. Part of me wanted to keep the same number out of stubbornness. Why should I have to change my contact info because my ex couldn't take a hint? But Jade pointed out that my peace of mind was more important than making a point Sasha would never understand anyway. She was right. The calls were affecting my mood even though I wasn't answering them. Coming home to 6 missed calls and knowing they were all from someone begging me to fix their life was exhausting. But before I could change my number, the calls stopped as suddenly as they'd started. Didn't hear from her for almost a week, which was the longest gap since this whole thing began. Figured maybe she'd finally gotten the message that I wasn't interested in being her emotional support system. Or maybe she'd found someone else to dump her problems on. Turns out I was wrong. She wasn't done trying to get my attention. She was just switching tactics. Saturday morning, Jade was staying over for the weekend, which had become pretty normal for us. We'd been talking about her officially moving in, maybe looking for a bigger place together. Taking things slow but heading in a good direction. I was making breakfast while Jade was in the shower. Then someone started pounding on my front door like there was an emergency. Not knocking, pounding. Like the building was on fire and they needed to evacuate everyone immediately. Looked through the peephole and saw Sasha standing there with her mom. Both of them looked rough as hell. Sasha had clearly been crying for hours. Makeup smeared everywhere, hair a complete mess, wearing some oversized sweatshirt that made her look like she'd given up on life entirely. Her mom looked pissed and determined, like she was on some kind of mission to fix her daughter's problems. Same woman who'd texted me months ago about how Sasha had found her soulmate was now standing on my doorstep, ready to help clean up the mess that soulmate had created. I didn't open the door. They kept pounding, getting more frantic by the minute. Could hear Sasha saying my name through the wood, begging me to just talk to her for 5 minutes. Her mom was being more direct, pointing out that my truck was in the driveway so they knew I was home. Then, Jade came downstairs in one of my t-shirts, hair still wet, looking relaxed and happy, complete opposite of the chaos happening outside my door. Asked who was making all the noise, and I told her it was my ex and her mom. Before I could stop her, Jade walked to the door and opened it. The pounding stopped immediately. Sasha's face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock that someone else answered, confusion about who this woman was, then anger when she realized what it meant. Her mom looked equally surprised but tried to hide it better. Jade handled the whole thing perfectly. Calm, polite, but firm about the fact that I was busy. Didn't get drawn into drama or explanations, just stated facts. I came up behind Jade with my hand on her shoulder. Sasha saw me, and her whole expression changed to desperate relief, like seeing me was going to solve all her problems. She immediately launched into how she'd been trying to reach me for weeks, how we needed to talk about everything that happened. Told me she'd made the biggest mistake of her life leaving me for Jonathan. Her mom jumped in right away with the sob story. How Sasha had been through hell with Jonathan, how he wasn't who they thought he was. Interesting how Jonathan went from being Sasha's soulmate to some dangerous stranger once he showed his true colors. Same mom who told me how perfect they were together was now acting like she'd never supported the relationship. Convenient how that worked out. I kept my responses short and to the point. Not interested in getting drawn into their emotional manipulation or guilt trips about our history together. Sasha looked back and forth between me and Jade, clearly shocked that I'd moved on. Asked how long we'd been together, seemed genuinely surprised it had only been 10 months since she'd left me for her ex. She tried the whole routine about how what we'd had was real, while Jonathan was just confusion and nostalgia. How our relationship had been solid and meaningful compared to her fairy tale reunion that turned into a nightmare. Too little too late. I told her that what we'd had was past tense, finished the moment she chose someone else over me. Her mom tried a different approach, appealing to my character, talking about how I was a good man, how Sasha had learned from her mistake, asking if I couldn't find it in my heart to forgive her. I explained that I'd already forgiven Sasha for my own peace of mind, but forgiving someone doesn't mean taking them back. Forgiveness is about letting go of anger, not giving someone another chance to hurt you. Sasha got more desperate, asking why I wouldn't even consider trying again. I laid it out simply, because I didn't trust her anymore, because she'd shown me who she really was when things got complicated, and that person was someone who'd abandon our relationship for a teenage fantasy. When she tried to claim she'd been confused about her feelings, I called bullshit. She wasn't confused, she was selfish. Wanted to keep me as backup while she explored whether Jonathan was a better option. Sasha broke down crying, begging for another chance, saying people make mistakes. I reminded her that I'd given her a chance for 4 years and an engagement ring, which she'd traded for 6 months with Jonathan. When she described those 6 months as hell and talked about how Jonathan was nothing like me, I told her that wasn't my problem. The consequences of her choices weren't something I needed to fix. Her mom made one last attempt, asking if I'd really not even consider taking back someone who'd realized what she'd lost. I explained that Sasha hadn't realized what she'd lost. She'd realized that her backup plan was better than her first choice. Not the same thing at all. Throughout this whole conversation, Jade stayed right beside me. Could feel her support without her needing to say anything. She answered their questions about our relationship honestly, but didn't get defensive or territorial. Sasha's anger started showing through the desperation when she realized I'd moved on quickly. I pointed out that I'd moved on after she left me, which is what normal people do when someone chooses someone else over them. When she tried the guilt trip about our 4 years together not meaning anything, I explained that those 4 years had meant everything until she decided Jonathan meant more. I looked at these two women standing on my doorstep, one who'd destroyed our relationship for a fantasy, and one who'd supported that decision until it backfired. 10 months ago, I would have done anything for Sasha, would have married her, built a life with her, trusted her completely. Now she was just someone from my past who'd made really bad decisions and wanted me to help fix the consequences. I told them no. Simple as that. That hit both of them hard. Sasha's face crumpled and her mom looked like I'd slapped her. They stood there for another minute, probably hoping I'd change my mind or invite them in to continue the conversation. But there was nothing left to say. Sasha had made her choice, lived with the consequences, and now wanted to undo it. Life doesn't work that way. They walked back to their car without another word. Jade closed the door and locked it, asked if I was okay. I was. Actually better than okay. Standing there with Jade, watching my ex and her mom drive away after begging for another chance, I felt nothing but relief. Sasha had wanted excitement over stability, Jonathan over me, her first love over real love. She got exactly what she chose. And I got what I deserved. Someone who chose me first, every day, without having to think about it. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well and refusing to be anyone's backup plan. Story 5. This story is titled, My Girlfriend Said I Was Replaceable and that she was settling for me. Later, she begged me to take her back after realizing she wasn't as wanted as she thought. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey everyone, I've been sitting on this for a while, but I need to let it out. My girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend now, let's call her Brittany, and I had been together for 2 years. She's 25. I'm 27, male. When we first started dating, I thought she was perfect. Brittany's the kind of girl who'd turn heads anywhere. Drop-dead gorgeous, super confident, and always had that vibe like she was the center of attention. I was proud to call her mine. About a year ago, we decided to move in together. Well, technically, she moved into my house since I own it. Brittany's been finishing her degree and working part-time, so I've been the one paying all the bills. Rent, utilities, groceries, even her car insurance. I didn't mind at first. I saw it as an investment in our future. Like, I figured I was helping her out so she could focus on her studies and we'd build a life together. For a while, it felt like a dream. Brittany was sweet, funny, and full of energy. She made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. I was pulling long hours at work, but it didn't bother me. I loved coming home to her, and she always had this way of lighting up the room. Well, in the beginning, at least. The first 6 months of living together were great. We spent our weekends exploring new places, binge-watching shows, and just enjoying each other's company. But then, slowly, things started changing. Brittany became more distant. It wasn't super obvious at first, just little things, like how she'd stop waiting for me to eat dinner, or how she'd scroll on her phone instead of talking to me. Then, she started going out more. She'd tell me she was meeting friends, and I didn't think much of it. I mean, she's allowed to have her own life, right? But it started becoming a regular thing. Weekends, weeknights, random evenings. I'd get home from work expecting to spend time with her, only to find an empty house. When she did come home, she was either on her phone or heading straight to bed. No, how was your day? No hugs, nothing. I tried to bring it up once. I told her I felt like we weren't spending as much time together anymore, and she just brushed it off with a casual, I just need some me time. You're overthinking it. Overthinking? I was putting so much effort into this relationship, trying to make things work, and somehow I was the one at fault for wanting to feel connected. It didn't sit right with me, but I didn't want to come across as clingy or controlling, so I let it go. Things only got worse. I'd wake up on Saturdays to find her already gone. She'd text me hours later saying she was hanging with the girls or something vague like that. I stopped asking for details because it felt like every time I did, she'd act like I was interrogating her. So I kept quiet, hoping it was just a phase and that things would go back to how they used to be. But honestly, it was starting to get to me. I felt like a roommate instead of her boyfriend. I was doing everything to make sure she was comfortable, paying all the bills, making sure she didn't have to stress about money, and she couldn't even bother to spend time with me. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the lack of effort. I remember this one night in particular. I came home after a 12-hour shift, exhausted. The house was dark. No sign of Brittany. I texted her, asking where she was, and she replied an hour later saying, "Just out, don't wait up." That was it. No explanation or an apology. I sat there on the couch, staring at the message, and I felt this knot in my stomach. Like, what was I even doing this for? I tried telling myself that she was just stressed with school, or that she needed some freedom. But deep down, I knew something was off. I started feeling like I was putting in all the effort while she was just taking it for granted. And the thing is, I loved Brittany. I really did. She wasn't just some girlfriend to me. She was someone I saw a future with. I wanted to believe that we were building something together. But the more time passed, the more I realized it felt like I was the only one building. She was just sitting on the sidelines, reaping the benefits. At this point, I started second-guessing everything. Was I being too nice? Was I enabling her behavior by doing too much? I didn't want to feel this way, but I couldn't help it. Every time I came home to an empty house or a distracted girlfriend, it felt like a slap in the face. Like I was giving her everything, and in return, I was getting the bare minimum. I talked to a couple of my friends about it, and they told me I needed to set boundaries. One of them even joked that I was basically her sugar daddy without the sugar. I laughed it off at the time, but it stung because it felt true. I didn't want to believe that Brittany was just using me, but the signs were starting to add up. At this point, I knew I needed to have a serious talk with her. I wanted to figure out if we were still on the same page, or if I was just fooling myself. I told myself I'd bring it up the next time we had a quiet moment together, if we ever had one again. That night, I asked myself if Brittany was really the person I thought she was, or if I'd just been blinded by how much I wanted her to be. That question was stuck in my head the next few days. I was so caught up in figuring out how to bring it up without sounding like I was accusing her of something. I didn't want to come off as insecure or controlling. I just wanted answers. But Brittany beat me to it, in the worst way possible. One night, she actually stayed home for once. I thought, finally, maybe we can have a normal evening together. We ordered takeout, sat on the couch, and started talking about random stuff. It felt nice, like old times, and for a second I thought maybe things were turning around. At some point, the conversation shifted to relationships and loyalty. I don't even remember how we got there, but I mentioned how important it was to me to feel like we were on the same team. Brittany kind of laughed and gave me this look, like I just said something dumb. Then she hit me with it. "You know, you're pretty replaceable. There are tons of guys who'd love to be with me." I swear I thought I misheard her at first. I literally blinked and asked, "What?" And she just repeated it, this time with a little smirk, like it was the funniest thing ever. "Don't get so serious," she added. "You know I'm joking." Except it didn't feel like a joke. Not even close. I just stared at her for a moment, trying to figure out if she realized how messed up that was to say. But she didn't. She just kept scrolling on her phone like she hadn't just shattered whatever was left of my confidence in this relationship. I didn't want to blow up, so I kept calm. I asked, "Is that how you really feel?" She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. Of course not. But like, it's true. Guys hit on me all the time. It's not my fault you can't handle that." I was floored. Not only did she double down, but she made it seem like I was the problem for being upset about it. And the worst part? She didn't even apologize. She just acted like it was no big deal, like I was overreacting. The rest of the night was awkward. I didn't say much, and neither did she. She went to bed early, probably annoyed that I wasn't laughing along with her. Meanwhile, I sat there on the couch, replaying the whole thing in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that she really believed what she said, that I was just another guy in a long line of options for her. The next day, I tried to act normal. I wanted to see if she'd bring it up, maybe apologize, or at least acknowledge it. But nope. She acted like everything was fine. She even kissed me on the cheek before heading out to meet her friends, like nothing had happened. That's when it really hit me. She didn't care. At all. She didn't care how her words made me feel, and she definitely didn't care about how one-sided everything had become. I was just there, convenient, replaceable. I started noticing other things after that. Little comments she'd make about how other guys looked at her, or how her friends joked about her being the hot one in our relationship. I'd always brushed it off before, but now it felt different. It felt like she was testing me, seeing how much I'd let slide. The thing is, I never saw myself as the jealous type. I've always believed that if you trust your partner, there's no need to stress about stuff like that. But this wasn't about trust anymore. It was about respect. And Brittany didn't respect me, plain and simple. Over the next few days, I started pulling back. I stopped texting her during the day to check in. I stopped asking her how her classes were going, or if she needed anything. I figured, why bother? If she thought I was so replaceable, then what was the point of putting in all this effort? But at the same time, I wasn't ready to end things just yet. I kept telling myself that maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe she really was joking and I was just blowing it out of proportion. I mean, 2 years is a long time to throw away over one comment, right? I tried to convince myself of that, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just one comment. It was everything. The distance, the entitlement, the lack of effort. That comment was just the cherry on top of a cake that had been rotting for months. One night, I was sitting in the living room scrolling through my phone when Brittany walked in. She barely looked at me before heading straight to the bedroom. I called out to her, "Hey, do you have a minute? I want to talk." She groaned like I'd just asked her to move a mountain. "What?" she said. I hesitated for a second, trying to find the right words. "Do you even want to be in this relationship anymore?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "What kind of question is that?" "Of course I do. Why wouldn't I?" I wanted to say, "Because you think I'm disposable." But instead, I just nodded and said, "I don't know. I feel like we're not on the same page." She sighed and rolled her eyes. "You're overthinking again. Can we not do this right now? I'm tired." That was it. She didn't even care enough to have the conversation. I watched her walk into the bedroom and close the door, and I realized I couldn't keep doing this. Something had to change, and soon, because I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. But before I could even figure out how to deal with Brittany, life decided to deal with me first. A couple of days after our half-hearted conversation, I got a call from one of her friends. Let's call her Melissa. Now, Melissa and Brittany were close. Not best friends, but definitely tight enough that her calling me abruptly was unexpected. I almost didn't answer because, let's be real, what could Melissa possibly have to say to me? I picked up anyway. "Hey, what's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though my stomach was already doing flips. Melissa didn't waste any time. "Listen, I don't know if I should even be telling you this, but I feel like you deserve to know," she started. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a friendly chat. I braced myself as she continued. "Brittany's been seeing other people. Like, not just one person, but multiple guys. And it's been going on for a while." For a solid 10 seconds, I just sat there in stunned silence, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "Are you sure?" I finally managed to choke out. Melissa sighed. "I'm sure. I didn't want to get involved, but we had a fight the other day, and some things came out. She's been bragging about it like it's no big deal. She even called you her backup plan." Backup plan. I'd been putting everything I had into this relationship, and to Brittany, I was just her safety net. Someone to fall back on while she did whatever the hell she wanted. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Not accusing, but genuinely curious. Melissa hesitated for a moment. "Honestly, because I think it's messed up. You're a good guy, and you don't deserve to be treated like this. I'd want someone to tell me if I were in your shoes." Now, I know how girls act when they have a fight together. Melissa and Brittany had a rocky history, even when they pretended to be friends. Melissa had always seemed a little too eager to criticize Brittany behind her back, and it wasn't hard to imagine she'd jump at an opportunity to tear her down. There was a chance she was exaggerating or even outright lying just to see Brittany crash and burn. Still, the timing made me uneasy. Brittany had been throwing up red flags for months, and this felt like the missing puzzle piece that tied it all together. I couldn't just dismiss it outright. I needed to figure out the truth on my own. Over the next few days, I started piecing things together without being obvious. I knew confronting Brittany without solid proof wouldn't get me anywhere. She'd deny everything or twist it around to make me the bad guy. So I decided to use her patterns and habits against her. One thing about Brittany was that she was a creature of routine, especially when it came to her nights out. She'd always say she was with her friends, but she was vague about details, no specifics on where they'd go or who she'd be with. So, the next time she said she was heading out, I casually asked her which friend she was meeting. "Oh, just Ashley," she replied quickly, barely looking at me as she grabbed her key. I waited about an hour, then I called Ashley. Not to accuse or even hint at anything. I just played it cool. "Hey, Ashley," I said, keeping my tone friendly. "Brittany said she was hanging out with you tonight. It seems her phone died. I can't reach her. I just wanted to double check if you know what time she'll be home." Ashley hesitated. There was a long pause, and then she said, she's not with me tonight. I haven't seen her in a while, actually." Her voice sounded genuinely confused. That was my first confirmation. I didn't react on the phone. "Oh, no worries," I said casually, covering my tracks. "Maybe I misunderstood. Thanks anyway." I hung up and started thinking. If she wasn't with Ashley, who was she with? And more importantly, where was she? That's when I remembered that Brittany had a favorite hangout spot she never mentioned anymore. A low-key cafe bar she used to love when we first started dating. It was the kind of place where people went to have quiet conversation, not wild nights out. She hadn't brought it up in months, but I had a hunch it was still part of her routine. I drove over there, parking a few blocks away so she wouldn't spot my car. My heart was racing, though I tried to keep my thoughts in check. This was just a hunch, I told myself, a way to rule things out, or so I hoped. As I approached the cafe bar, part of me was still holding on to the slim hope that maybe Melissa had exaggerated, that maybe Brittany wasn't capable of what I was about to uncover. Sure enough, there she was, sitting at a table by the window. But not alone. My stomach dropped. She was laughing and leaning in close to some guy I'd never seen before. The way her eyes lit up, the casual way she touched his arm, the way he leaned toward her, it was all too intimate. They weren't just friends. I could feel the weight of betrayal settle in my chest, heavy and cold. Everything I had tried to ignore, to rationalize, suddenly became impossible to deny. I didn't storm in or cause a scene, although I wanted to, but I stayed calm, even though my hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I took a picture from the sidewalk, just enough to document what I needed without drawing attention. As I snapped the photo, all I could feel was anger and humiliation, and some sense of validation. All those doubts I'd been suppressing, all those red flags I'd tried to explain away, they were right there in front of me, staring back at me through the glass. She'd played me, plain and simple. Worse, she'd assumed I was too blind or too trusting to ever figure it out. But the truth was out now, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't even angry, not at first. I was just done. There was no salvaging this, no fixing what had been broken. Brittany had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine to show her which one of us is replaceable. I didn't waste any time. The moment I decided I was done, I got to work. First, I canceled the auto pay for her car insurance. She had relied on me to handle it for months, but that ship had sailed. If she wanted the luxury of driving around town, she could figure out how to pay for it herself. Then I opened the fridge. It was stocked with the snacks she loved, specialty yogurts, her favorite drinks, the fancy cheese she insisted on, but never finished. All of it, gone. I wasn't going to keep catering to someone who had been laughing behind my back while she enjoyed the comfort I provided. Next, I told her straight up that she needed to start covering her share of the utilities. Water, electricity, internet, all of it. I wasn't running a free ride program anymore. She looked at me so confused when I brought it up, but I stayed calm. You're an adult, I told her. It's time you start acting like one. This wasn't about being petty. It was about drawing a line. I wasn't going to be her safety net anymore, and I wanted her to feel it. If she had been treating me like her backup plan this entire time, she was about to get a reality check. When Brittany noticed the changes, she didn't waste any time confronting me. She stormed into the living room one evening, clutching a letter from her insurance provider. "Why didn't the insurance go through this month?" she snapped, waving the paper like it was a declaration of war. I barely glanced up from my seat. "Because I'm not paying for it anymore," I said simply. Her eyes narrowed, her tone turning sharper. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're an adult, Brittany. You can figure it out," I replied, my voice steady and cold. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own actions without me having to spell it out. She wasn't done, of course. "What's your problem lately?" she fired back, her voice rising. "You've been acting weird. And now this? Are you seriously trying to punish me for something?" I couldn't help but let out a short, bitter laugh. The irony of her accusation was almost comical. "Punish you?" I said, locking eyes with her. "Brittany, you've been running around behind my back while I've been holding everything down. Do you really think I wouldn't find out?" The color draining from her cheeks. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. But then she straightened up, folding her arms defensively. "Who told you that?" she asked, her tone sharp but betraying a hint of panic. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice even. "No one told me. I saw you." Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone, opened the photo I'd taken at the cafe. There she was, sitting with some guy, laughing like they were the happiest couple in the world. "Recognize this?" I asked, my tone cutting through the silence like a knife. I didn't give her a chance to spin a lie. "So tell me, Brittany," I continued, my voice unwavering, "how many other guys who've been hitting on you are you dating now? Because clearly, you've moved on while still living under my roof." Her defensiveness quickly turned into rage. "You don't understand. I deserve attention. You've been so busy with work that I felt like I wasn't even in a relationship anymore." I stood up, my eyes narrowing as I looked down at her. "You made a mistake, Brittany," I said. "You took me for granted. You thought I'd stick around no matter how little you respected me. But let me make one thing clear. I'm not your safety net. You lost that the moment you decided I was replaceable." She glared at me, her voice rising as she shouted, "You're being dramatic. Every girl gets hit on. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have felt the need to go out so much." Her words were like gasoline on a fire. "Don't put this on me," I said coldly. "You had a choice. You could have talked to me. Instead, you decided to cheat on me. That's on you, not me." Brittany's face crumpled. but I didn't let up. You wanted to know what my problem is? It's you, Brittany. And now, I'm done. She started to speak, but I cut her off. Cut the crap and pack your things and find somewhere else to stay. This isn't your home anymore. The words hung in the air for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was trying to figure out how to spin this, how to manipulate the situation in her favor. But for once, I wasn't giving her the chance. You can't just kick me out, Brittany cried, her voice shaking as tears streamed down her face. I don't have anywhere to go. Please don't do this. I'll fix things, I promise. I locked eyes with her as she stood there, trembling. Brittany, I said, my tone steady, I've worked hard to build a stable life for us. Tuners out, you don't deserve it. Remember what you said? That there were plenty of guys who'd love to be with you? Well, maybe it's time you find one of them, because I'm done. Her tears turned into full-on sobbing as she dropped to her knees. I didn't mean it, she wailed, clutching at her chest. I wasn't thinking. I was just joking. Please don't throw me out. I'll change. I'll do anything. I shook my head, my voice unwavering. You made your choices, Brittany. You disrespected me, lied to me, and treated me like an option. Now you're dealing with the consequences of that. It's not my job to save you anymore. For a moment, I saw her desperation turn to anger. You'll regret this, she spat, rising shakily to her feet. You'll regret losing a girl like me? You'll never find anyone better. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A short, sharp laugh that made her flinch. Better than you? Brittany, you're replaceable. You've proven that. Goodbye. She stood there, stunned, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say more, but no words came out. Finally, she grabbed her things and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. As the silence settled over the house, I felt no regret, no second guessing, just relief. I wasn't going to let her guilt or arrogance hold me back any longer. In the days that followed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. How could I have let it get this far? How had I not seen the signs sooner? But of course, Brittany wasn't going to let things end quietly. Within days, I started hearing from mutual friends. Apparently, she'd been telling everyone that I was controlling and emotionally abusive. She claimed I had kicked her out for no reason and that I'd never let her have any freedom. I couldn't believe it. She was rewriting the entire relationship, making herself out to be the victim while painting me as some kind of monster. At first, it pissed me off. I wanted to defend myself, to set the record straight. But then I realized something. The people who truly knew me wouldn't buy her lies. They'd seen how much I had done for her and how one-sided our relationship had become. Anyone who believed her wasn't someone I needed in my life anyway. A few weeks later, I ran into a mutual friend at a coffee shop who had some news about Brittany. Apparently, she had moved on and started dating some rich guy. At first, I just shrugged it off. It wasn't my business anymore. But then the friend smirked and added, well, it didn't last 2 weeks. Turns out he dumped her as soon as he found out she'd been living with you rent-free, and you were paying for her school tuition. Guess he wasn't thrilled about being her next ATM. I couldn't help but chuckle. Classic Brittany, always looking for an upgrade thinking she's irreplaceable. Honestly, I didn't feel bad for her. She made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. Now the only thing on my mind is hoping she wouldn't try to come crawling back, bringing more trouble into my life. Thanks for reading, everyone. If anything new happens, I'll let you know. But for now, I'm just happy to leave this chapter behind. Onwards and upward. Final update. Hey folks, I thought I'd give you all an update on how things have been since Brittany left. Here's the thing Brittany never realized. She thought she was the prize, but she wasn't. A month after she left, I started seeing someone else. Someone who actually treated me with respect and kindness. Let's call her Rachel. Rachel was everything Brittany wasn't. Supportive, thoughtful, and real. She didn't just take from me, she actually cared about giving back to the relationship. For the first time in a long time, I felt valued. Word got around fast, and it didn't take long for Brittany to find out. I don't know how she found out exactly. Maybe a mutual friend, maybe social media. But when she did, she lost it. According to a few people we both knew, she was completely devastated. Suddenly, the reality that I'd moved on while no one wanted her, she wasn't handling it well. At first, she tried subtle things after that guy dumped her, sending me random texts, asking to talk, and even showing up at places she knew I might be. I ignored all of it. I was over her, and Rachel deserved my full attention. But then, Brittany decided to escalate things in the most dramatic way possible. It all started one evening when I heard shouting outside my house. At first, I thought it was just noise from the street, but then I recognized Brittany's voice. I walked to the door, opened it, and there she was, standing on the porch with 4 of her friends. They were all ganging up on me like I was a criminal. Their voices were loud, and their energy was chaotic. "You're unbelievable," one of her friends yelled, pointing at me like I was on trial. "You think you can just toss her aside like she's nothing? You're heartless," Brittany added, tears streaming down her face. She looked genuinely distraught. but I wasn't falling for it. After everything we've been through, you're just done with me? Just like that? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms, calm, controlled, unmoved. What do you want, Brittany? I asked, keeping my tone firm and ignoring the comments flying from her entourage. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I came here to tell you something important, but you won't even talk to me. You just slammed the door on me. On us. Her friends nodded, giving her moral support like they were her backup singers. One of them chimed in, "You don't even know what she's been dealing with. She deserves better than this." Are you done? I asked him, my voice steady, keeping my eyes locked on Brittany, because I'm not interested in theatric. If you have something to say, say it. Brittany's lip trembled as she looked at her friends for backup, then back at me. She finally blurted it out. I'm pregnant. It's yours. The porch fell silent. Her friends stared at me, clearly expecting some big reaction. But I didn't flinch. I just stood there, watching her, calm and collected. Is that so? I said finally, raising an eyebrow. And you came here with your cheerleading squad to tell me this because... She sniffled. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. I've been scared, and I don't know what to do. All right, I said, nodding slowly. Let's cut the drama. If you're pregnant, you'll have no problem proving it. Show me a test, a doctor's note, something. Her friends exchanged nervous glances before one of them jumped in. She just found out. She hasn't had time to go to the doctor yet. Are you that stupid? I turned my gaze back to Brittany. Is that true? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Because if it is, we'll handle it the right way. But if it's not true, and you're lying to me, this conversation ends now. For a split second, her face twisted with panic before she quickly tried to mask it. Why can't you just trust me? She asked, her voice rising. After everything we've been through, why would I lie about something like this? I don't trust you because you've given me every reason not to, I replied, my voice cold but steady. So, again, prove it. If you're telling the truth, we'll deal with it. But I'm not entertaining empty words. Her friends started shouting again, throwing insults, but I tuned them out. My eyes stayed on Brittany, and it didn't take long for her to look away. That split second of hesitation told me everything I needed to know. The group eventually stormed off, cursing me under their breath and calling me every name they could think of. Brittany's performance, though convincing at first, had fallen apart. I didn't let it shake me, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't leave me uneasy. What if there was some truth to it? A few days later, the truth came out. Melissa, the same person who had tipped me off about Brittany's behavior, reached out again. She seemed to be following our breakup chaos. She assured me that Brittany wasn't pregnant and had made the whole thing up. Brittany had been spiraling since she found out I'd moved on, and the fake pregnancy was her last-ditch attempt to trap me into taking her back. Honestly, it wasn't shocking, just disgusting. I blocked Brittany on everything immediately. Whatever lies she was spreading or plans she had weren't my problem anymore. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward with Rachel, someone who actually valued me. Brittany thought she was irreplaceable, but she was the one who was easily replaced. As for her, she'd been couch surfing and had dropped out of school after her parents refused to support her. I didn't care anyways. She got what she deserved for taking everything she had for granted. And yeah, that's it for me now. Thanks for all your support and comments, guys. It really meant a lot. Take care. Story 6. This story is titled, My Sister-in-Law Falsely Accused Me of essaying. My daughter and my wife believed her now. The truth is out, and she is begging me to drop charges. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I, 34 male, never thought I'd be sharing something this personal on Reddit, but after everything that's happened, I need to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it all down will help me process the nightmare I've been living through. Maybe someone out there has been through something similar and can offer advice. Or maybe I just need to tell someone who won't immediately take sides. Some background about me. I've been a wildlife photographer for the past decade. I started right after college, working for local nature magazines before building up enough of a portfolio to land contracts with National Geographic and the Discovery Channel. It's not the most stable career. I'm often away on location for days or weeks at a time, trekking through forests or camping in national parks to get the perfect shot of an elusive species. But it's my passion, and I've built a good reputation in the industry. I met my wife, Jessica, 32 female, 6 years ago during a gallery showing of my work. She's a high school biology teacher, with a love for the natural world that matched my own. She was there with her students on a field trip, and I noticed her immediately, not just because she was beautiful, but because she was asking all these insightful questions about the ecosystems in my photographs. I asked her out for coffee after her students had moved on to another exhibit, and we clicked instantly. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden. It was perfect, just close friends and family surrounded by nature. Jessica's sister, Megan, 36 female, was her maid of honor. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs even then. During the wedding planning, Megan kept trying to change things, insisting her ideas were better than what Jessica and I had chosen. During her maid of honor speech, she talked more about herself than about Jessica or our relationship. But I brushed it off. It was our wedding day, and I wasn't going to let anything spoil it. For the first few years, our marriage was everything I could have hoped for. Jessica and I balanced each other perfectly. When I was away on assignments, we'd video call every night. When I was home, we'd spend weekends hiking or visiting botanical gardens. We talked about having kids eventually, but we were enjoying our time together, building our careers and traveling when we could. 3 years into our marriage, Jessica's relationship with her sister started to become more complicated. Megan had gone through a messy divorce after her husband left her for a younger woman at his office. Around the same time, she found out she couldn't have children, a devastating 1-2 punch that sent her into a depression. Jessica, being the caring person she is, spent more and more time with Megan, trying to help her through it. I supported this completely. Family should be there for each other in tough times. But Megan's presence in our lives gradually increased to the point where it felt intrusive. She'd show up unannounced at our house, expecting Jessica to drop everything to comfort her. She'd call in the middle of the night in tears. She'd guilt Jessica if we had plans that didn't include her. When I gently suggested to Jessica that Megan might benefit from professional help, she got defensive. "She's seeing a therapist already," Jessica insisted. "But she needs her family too. You don't understand because you're an only child." That was true. I grew up without siblings, so the dynamics between sisters were somewhat foreign to me. But even so, something about Megan's behavior seemed excessive, even manipulative. Still, I tried to be understanding. After all, she was going through a genuinely difficult time. When Jessica and I decided to try for a baby, we were thrilled when she got pregnant almost immediately. Megan's reaction was mixed. She congratulated us with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, then immediately started talking about how difficult pregnancy would be, how much it would change our lives, how Jessica's body would never be the same. Not exactly the supportive response we'd hoped for. Throughout Jessica's pregnancy, Megan oscillated between being overly involved, buying mountains of baby supplies we didn't need, insisting on attending every doctor's appointment, and making passive-aggressive comments about how pregnancy was ruining Jessica's figure, or how we'd regret not traveling more before having kids. Jessica's pregnancy was relatively smooth until the last trimester, when she developed gestational hypertension that eventually led to preeclampsia. She was put on bed rest for the final 6 weeks, and I rearranged my work schedule to be home with her, canceling 2 international shoots that would have been significant for my career. I didn't mind. Jessica and our baby's health were my priority. Megan immediately appointed herself Jessica's primary caretaker, despite the fact that I was perfectly capable of looking after my wife. She'd show up every day, supposedly to help, but spent most of the time criticizing how I organized the nursery or prepared Jessica's meals. "You're lucky I'm here," she'd say within earshot of Jessica. "Most men are useless when it comes to this stuff." I bit my tongue for Jessica's sake. She was already stressed about the pregnancy complications, and I didn't want to add relationship drama to her worries. So I tolerated Megan's presence and her constant undermining of my capabilities as a husband and soon-to-be father. Emma was born via emergency C-section at 37 weeks. It was the most terrifying and wonderful day of my life. There were complications during the delivery. Jessica hemorrhaged and needed additional surgery. For a few horrifying hours, I wasn't sure if she was going to make it, but she pulled through, though her recovery would be longer and more difficult than we'd anticipated. Emma was perfect, 6 pounds, 2 ounces, with Jessica's blue eyes and what looked like my dark hair. I fell in love with her instantly. The first time I held her, this tiny bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket, I made a silent promise to always protect her, to be the kind of father she could count on no matter what. Jessica's difficult recovery meant she needed help when we brought Emma home. My plan was to take extended leave from work. I had savings, and my regular clients were understanding about the situation. But Megan immediately inserted herself into the equation. "You need to get back to work," she told me firmly. "Your fancy photography career won't sustain itself. I'll move in temporarily to help Jessica with the baby." Before I could object, Jessica was nodding in agreement. "It makes sense, Nathan. You shouldn't put your career on hold indefinitely. Megan has experience with babies from her job, and she can be here full time. I should mention that Megan works as a social worker specializing in child welfare cases. On paper, she was qualified to help with a newborn, but something about the arrangement made me uneasy. Still, Jessica seemed relieved at the solution, and I didn't want to cause her more stress during her recovery. So I reluctantly agreed, though I scaled back my assignments to local jobs that wouldn't keep me away for more than a day or two at a time. Megan moved into our guest room, temporarily. That was 4 months ago. I had just returned from a 3-day shoot at Yellowstone, documenting wolf behavior for a conservation magazine. It was my first multi-day assignment since Emma was born, and I'd been reluctant to take it, but Jessica had insisted. "We need the income," she'd said, "and Megan's here to help. We'll be fine." I'd called every night, and while Jessica assured me everything was okay, something in her voice sounded off. She seemed distant, distracted. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Taking care of a newborn was grueling, even with help. When I walked through the door that Friday afternoon, the house was unusually quiet. No TV, no music, none of the baby sounds I'd grown accustomed to. I set down my equipment bag and camera case in the hallway and moved quietly toward the living room. Jessica was asleep on the couch, which immediately struck me as odd. Even with her difficult recovery, she rarely napped during the day, too anxious about keeping a consistent schedule with Emma. My daughter was lying beside her on the couch, wide awake and squirming uncomfortably. I smiled at the sight of her. After 3 days away, she looked like she'd grown already. As I approached, I noticed the unmistakable smell that indicated Emma needed a diaper change. Not wanting to wake Jessica, who clearly needed the rest, I carefully lifted Emma from the couch. She recognized me immediately, her face lighting up with a toothless smile that melted my heart. "Hey, princess," I whispered, nestling her against my chest. "Let's get you changed, huh?" I carried her to the nursery, breathing in her baby scent mixed with the less pleasant diaper odor. I laid Emma down gently on the changing table, making funny faces at her while I gathered wipes, a fresh diaper, and clean clothes. She was watching me intently, kicking her legs in the air. I had just unfastened her soiled diaper when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Assuming it was Jessica, I turned with a smile, ready to greet my wife. But it was Megan standing in the doorway, and the expression on her face stopped me cold. Her eyes were blazing with an intensity I'd never seen before. Her mouth twisted into a snarl. For a moment, she just stared at me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. I blinked in confusion. "Changing Emma's diaper? What does it look like I'm doing?" She took a step into the room, her entire body tense like a predator about to pounce. "Get away from her right now." "Megan, what are you talking about? She needs a change." I didn't get to finish my sentence because suddenly Megan was charging at me, her face contorted with rage. Before I could react, she was hitting me, clawing at my face, trying to pull me away from the changing table. Instinctively, I leaned over Emma to shield her from Megan's attack, using my body as a barrier while trying to fend off the blows with one arm. "Get away from her, you disgusting pervert!" Megan was screaming now, her voice echoing through the nursery. "I saw what you were doing!" I was completely stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. "What the hell are you talking about? I'm changing her diaper!" The commotion woke Jessica, who came rushing into the nursery, her eyes wide with alarm. She took in the scene, me leaning over Emma, Megan trying to pull me away, and froze. Megan immediately turned to her, tears streaming down her face. "I caught him, Jess. I caught him touching Emma inappropriately. I saw it with my own eyes." My heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. "That's insane," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of shock and anger. "I was changing her diaper, Jessica. You know I would never—" "He's lying," Megan cut in, her voice suddenly calm and certain. "I saw him, Jess. I wouldn't make this up." Jessica looked from Megan to me, her face draining of color. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the desperate desire not to believe what her sister was saying. But then she looked at Megan, the person who'd been by her side through her recovery, who'd been helping with Emma when I was away for work, and something changed in her expression. "Get out," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Get out of this house right now." "Jessica, please," I begged, my mind racing to understand how this could be happening. "You know me. You know I would never hurt Emma. Megan is lying." "Stop it," Jessica cried, moving forward to take Emma from the changing table. She cradled our daughter protectively, backing away from me. "Just stop. I can't. I need you to leave." Megan stood beside Jessica, a supportive arm around her shoulders, but her eyes on me were triumphant. In that moment, I saw the truth. Whatever was happening, Megan had orchestrated it deliberately. Why are you doing this? I asked her directly, ignoring Jessica for the moment. Why would you make up something so vile? I'm not making anything up, Megan replied coldly. I know what I saw. And Jessica, you need to call the police. The police? I repeated incredulously. This is insane. Jessica, please, just think about this. Why would I ever… But Jessica wasn't listening to me anymore. She had pulled out her phone and handed it to Megan, who dialed 911 with a steadiness that chilled me. As I stood there, helpless and horrified, I heard Megan calmly report that she had witnessed child abuse, giving our address and my description. The next 20 minutes were a blur of desperate attempts to make Jessica listen to reason. But with Megan constantly interrupting, whispering in Jessica's ear, steering the narrative, my words seemed to bounce off an invisible wall. Jessica wouldn't look me in the eye, holding Emma close and keeping her distance from me, as if I might snatch our daughter away. When the police arrived, Megan greeted them at the door like she'd been expecting them. In a clear, composed voice that contrasted sharply with her hysterical attack on me earlier, she told them she had witnessed me inappropriately touching my daughter during a diaper change. She described specific actions with a clinical detachment that made me physically ill. None of it had happened. None of it was true. But she spoke with such conviction, such apparent sincerity. The officers looked at me with barely disguised disgust as they handcuffed me. Jessica stood in the corner of the living room, tears streaming down her face, unable to watch. My last glimpse of my daughter was her tiny face peeking over Jessica's shoulder as I was led out the door of my own home in handcuffs. They put me in a holding cell by myself, which was probably for the best. I'd heard enough stories about what happens to people accused of crimes against children in jail. As I sat on the hard bench, my mind kept replaying the events, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. Why would Megan do this? Why would she fabricate such a horrific accusation? And Jessica, how could she believe it, even for a second? We'd been together for 6 years. She knew me better than anyone. How could she think I was capable of hurting our daughter? I barely slept that night, my thoughts cycling between confusion, anger, and a gut-wrenching fear that I might never see my daughter again. By morning, I felt hollowed out, numb from the shock of how quickly my life had imploded. A public defender came to see me, a harried-looking woman with too many files under her arm. She told me the preliminary charges and asked for my side of the story. When I explained what had really happened, that I was simply changing my daughter's diaper when my sister-in-law attacked me and made false accusations, she looked skeptical. Is there anyone who can corroborate your version of events? She asked. That's when I remembered the cameras. 6 months ago, after a series of break-ins in our neighborhood, I had installed a comprehensive security system throughout our house, including motion-activated cameras in every room except the bathrooms. One of those cameras was mounted on the wall of the nursery, positioned to capture the entire room. There's a security camera in the nursery, I told her, suddenly hopeful. It would have recorded everything. The public defender looked surprised but made a note. I'll have someone check. If there is footage, it could be crucial evidence. She left, promising to return once she had more information. I sat back on the bench, a small spark of hope flickering in the darkness. The camera would vindicate me. It had to. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. I was given a tasteless meal that I barely touched, too nauseated with anxiety to eat. Finally, the door to the holding area opened, and the public defender reappeared, this time with a police detective. We've reviewed the security footage from your home, the detective said without preamble. Based on what we've seen, we're dropping all charges against you. Relief flooded through me so intensely that I had to sit down again. The camera caught everything? The detective nodded grimly. Everything. It clearly shows you changing your daughter's diaper, nothing more. Then it shows your sister-in-law entering the room and physically assaulting you while you tried to protect the baby. There was absolutely no inappropriate contact. What about Megan's statement? The detailed description she gave? Fabricated, the detective said flatly. We'll be investigating her for filing a false report, among other potential charges. The procedural details of my release passed in a blur. All I could think about was getting home, seeing Emma, making Jessica understand what had really happened. But as I collected my personal belongings and signed the release forms, a cold realization settled over me. Jessica had believed Megan without question. She had looked at me, her husband of 5 years, the father of her child, and seen a monster. How do you come back from that? When the taxi dropped me off at our house, I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, steeling myself for whatever came next. I used my key to unlock the front door, half expecting Jessica to have changed the locks already. The house was quiet when I entered, but I could hear movement in the kitchen. Taking a deep breath, I walked through the living room, and found Megan sitting at our kitchen table, casually scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. She looked up when I entered, her eyes widening slightly in surprise, before narrowing with contempt. "You should have stayed in jail," she said coolly. "I know what I saw." Rage surged through me, hot and consuming. After everything she'd done, she was still sitting in my house, still maintaining her lie. I had to clench my fist to keep from shouting. "The cameras saw everything, Megan," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Why are you doing this?" A flicker of something, panic perhaps, crossed her face before she composed herself. "What cameras?" "The security cameras I installed after the Richardsons' house was broken into. There's one in the nursery. It recorded everything yesterday. Me changing Emma's diaper, you attacking me, you making up those disgusting accusations. Everything." Megan's face paled, but she recovered quickly. She stood up, grabbing her purse from the counter. "You're lying. There are no cameras. The police have the footage. That's why I'm here, and not still in a cell. They've dropped all charges, and they're investigating you for filing a false report." For a moment, Megan looked genuinely frightened. Then her expression hardened into something ugly and defiant. "Jessica will never believe you over me. Never. I've made sure of that." Then she pushed past me and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood in the kitchen, trembling with the aftermath of confrontation, wondering what she meant by that last statement. What had she been telling Jessica all this time? I called Jessica's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried her parents' house next, assuming that's where she would have taken Emma. Her father answered, his voice instantly hostile. "She doesn't want to talk to you?" he said, before I could even ask for her. "Leave her alone." "Mr. Collins, please," I begged. "The police dropped all charges. There were security cameras in the nursery. They caught everything on video. Megan lied about what happened." There was a long pause. "What cameras?" "I installed them after the break-ins in our neighborhood. One of them is in the nursery. It recorded everything. Me changing Emma's diaper, Megan attacking me, everything. The police have the footage." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll tell Jessica you called," he said finally, his tone slightly less hostile. Then he hung up. I spent the rest of the day in a strange limbo, moving through the house that no longer felt like home. I noticed signs of Megan's presence everywhere. Her jacket hung on the coat rack, her brand of coffee in the cupboard, her laptop on the side table in the living room. It made my skin crawl to think of her infiltrating our lives so completely. Late that night, as I sat in the dark living room, unable to sleep in the bed I'd shared with Jessica, my phone rang. It was Jessica. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble, her voice hoarse from crying. "About the cameras?" "Yes," I said simply. "The police have the footage. It shows exactly what happened. Me changing Emma's diaper, nothing more. Then Megan came in and attacked me." Jessica was quiet for so long that I thought the call had dropped. "Why would she do that?" she finally whispered. "I don't know," I admitted. "But she did. And you believed her, Jessica. You believed I could hurt our daughter." "I was confused," she said weakly. "She's my sister. She said she saw, and she works with abused children. She knows the signs." "I'm your husband," I countered, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "You've known me for 6 years. How could you think, even for a second, that I would hurt Emma?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "I don't know what I was thinking. Everything's been so hard since the birth, and Megan's been telling me things." "What things?" "That you seemed distant with Emma. That you were too rough when you held her. That you seemed relieved to go on your photography trips to get away from us. Little things at first, but they added up. And I was exhausted, in pain from the surgery, overwhelmed with a new baby. I wasn't thinking clearly." I closed my eyes, pieces falling into place. "She's been manipulating you." "Nathan, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known—" "Where are you?" I interrupted. "At my parents'. With Emma." "Is Megan there?" "Number she left a few hours ago. Said she needed to get something from our house." That explained her presence in our kitchen earlier. "Jessica, I think you should stay there for now," I said carefully. "We need to figure this out, but I don't think we should do it with Emma in the middle." Are you saying you don't want us to come home?" Her voice broke on the word home. "I'm saying I need time to process all of this. You believed I could hurt our daughter, Jessica. You let the police take me away. That's not something I can just get over overnight." She was crying again, soft, broken sobs that once would have compelled me to comfort her. But now I felt a wall between us, built of suspicion and betrayal. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said gently. "Give Emma a kiss for me." After hanging up, I sat in the darkness for a long time, wondering how we had come to this point and where we could possibly go from here. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, custody hearings, and sleepless nights. Jessica filed for divorce 3 days after my arrest, citing concerns for Emma's safety. Despite the police dropping all charges, despite the video evidence, she was still proceeding with the divorce. Her lawyer argued that even though the specific incident had been disproven, there were ongoing concerns about my suitability as a parent. I knew Megan was behind this. She had poisoned Jessica against me so thoroughly that even clear evidence of my innocence wasn't enough to undo the damage. But I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I hired the best family law attorney I could afford, liquidating one of my retirement accounts to cover the retainer. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen, my lawyer, Diana Chen, told me after reviewing the security footage. Your sister-in-law fabricated serious allegations against you, physically assaulted you, and appears to have been manipulating your wife for months. We're going to use every bit of this. Diana was a force of nature in the courtroom, sharp, meticulous, and utterly unintimidated by the tactics of Jessica's lawyer. During the initial custody hearing, she presented not only the security footage from the day of the incident, but also earlier clips that showed Megan's increasingly controlling behavior in our home. Notice how Ms. Collins positions herself between Mr. Reeves and his daughter whenever he attempts to care for her, Diana pointed out as we watched footage from the week before the incident. Notice how she physically moves his hand away when he tries to feed his daughter. This is a pattern of interference that culminated in her false allegations. But the most revealing moment came during Megan's testimony. Under Diana's skilled questioning, Megan's story began to unravel. First, she claimed she'd seen me touching Emma inappropriately during the diaper change. When pressed on what exactly she had witnessed, she changed her statement, saying she'd only seen me looking at her in a way that made me uncomfortable. When Diana asked her to explain the discrepancy between her initial report to the police and her current testimony, Megan became defensive. I know what I saw, she insisted, her voice rising. I work with abused children. I know the signs. Ms. Collins, Diana said calmly. The security footage clearly shows Mr. Reeves changing his daughter's diaper in a completely appropriate manner. It shows you entering the room and immediately attacking him without provocation. Can you explain that? The camera angle must not have caught everything, Megan said, her eyes darting around the courtroom. Or maybe he edited the footage. The footage was retrieved directly by the police from the security system's cloud storage, Diana pointed out. It couldn't have been tampered with. Megan's face flushed with anger. He fooled everyone with his perfect husband act for years. I was the only one who saw through it. I was trying to protect my niece. By fabricating allegations that could have sent an innocent man to prison? Diana asked. By physically attacking him while he was caring for an infant? You don't understand, Megan shouted, losing the composure she'd maintained throughout the hearing. Jessica is my sister. That baby should have been mine. I would have been a better mother than she is, and a better wife to Nathan than she could ever be. The courtroom fell silent. Even Megan seemed shocked by what she had just revealed. Jessica, sitting on the other side of the courtroom, stared at her sister with a stunned expression. The judge cleared his throat. I think we'll take a short recess, he said, his eyes lingering on Megan with clear disapproval. During the break, Jessica approached me for the first time since the incident. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her skin pale, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Did you hear what she said? Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. She's been planning this, Jessica. She wanted to take my place in your life, in Emma's life. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I should have seen it. All those little comments. The way she tried to take over everything with Emma. I thought she was just being helpful because of my recovery. But she was trying to replace me. Before I could respond, the bailiff called us back into the courtroom. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. He granted me temporary full custody of Emma, with Jessica allowed supervised visitation until a final determination could be made. He also issued a restraining order against Megan, barring her from coming near me, Emma, or our home. As we left the courtroom, I caught a glimpse of Megan's face. The look she gave me was pure hatred, a promise that this wasn't over. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe again. I had my daughter back. Now I just had to figure out what came next. 3 months after the custody hearing, I received a call from Jessica's mother, Martha. She and I had always had a good relationship, unlike her husband, who followed Megan's lead in treating me with suspicion from the start. Nathan, Martha said, her voice tight with emotion, you need to come over. There's something you should hear. When I arrived at their house, Martha led me to the kitchen where Jessica was sitting, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked up when I entered, but quickly looked away, as if unable to meet my gaze. Tell him, Martha said gently. placing a hand on Jessica's shoulder. Jessica took a shaky breath. Megan admitted she lied, she whispered, staring down at the table. She didn't see anything that day. She made it all up. I sat down, suddenly needing the support of the chair. Why would she do that? She's always been jealous of me, Jessica said, finally looking up. Of my marriage, my baby. She's been struggling with her own divorce and infertility issues. She saw an opportunity to drive a wedge between us, and she took it. But why did you believe her? I asked, the question that had been haunting me for months. Why didn't you trust me? Jessica's eyes filled with tears again. She'd been telling me things for weeks. Small things at first. How you seemed disinterested in Emma. How you were probably relieved to go on your photography trips to get away from us. Then she started suggesting that you might be inappropriate with Emma. She said she'd seen signs. Signs? I echoed incredulously. She's a social worker, Nathan, Jessica said, as if that explained everything. She deals with abuse cases. I trusted her professional judgment, and I was exhausted, in pain from my recovery, overwhelmed with a new baby. I wasn't thinking clearly, Martha cut in. The truth is, she manipulated Jessica when she was at her most vulnerable, and Jessica let herself be manipulated because Megan was doing so much to help with Emma. Where is she now? I asked. Gone, Martha said firmly. We told her to leave and not come back after she admitted the truth. The full story emerged gradually over the next hour. Megan had been harboring resentment toward Jessica for years, jealous of her relatively easy path through life while Megan struggled with relationships, then infertility, then her divorce. When Jessica had Emma, that resentment crystallized into a toxic obsession. Megan had moved in with the deliberate intention of driving a wedge between Jessica and me. She'd been systematically undermining Jessica's confidence in me as a father, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting that my frequent work trips were a sign I didn't want to be involved in Emma's life. She'd been positioning herself as the more capable caretaker, the one who truly understood Jessica's needs and Emma's. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Jessica showed me what she'd found while cleaning the guest room after Megan left. A journal in which Megan had detailed her plan to save Jessica and Emma from me, gradually turning Jessica against me and ultimately taking my place in their lives. She wrote about how she'd be a better mother to Emma than either of us, Jessica said, her voice hollow with disbelief. How she'd raise her as her own once I saw the truth about you. The journal also revealed that Megan had been deliberately interfering with Jessica's recovery, secretly adjusting her medication dosage to keep her slightly foggy and more susceptible to suggestion. She'd been isolating Jessica from friends who might have provided a reality check, screening her calls, and convincing her she was too tired for visitors. I can't believe I didn't see what she was doing, Jessica said, burying her face in her hands. I feel like such a fool. She's manipulative, I said softly. And you were vulnerable. A difficult birth, pain medication, sleep deprivation. It's no wonder you were susceptible. The truth was finally out, but that didn't erase the damage that had been done. Jessica had doubted me at the most fundamental level, had believed I could harm our child. The trust that forms the foundation of any marriage had been shattered. Could we rebuild it? Did I even want to try? As I drove home that evening, Emma asleep in her car seat, I had more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Megan's toxic presence in our lives was at an end. Now we had to pick up the pieces and decide what came next. A week after my conversation with Jessica and Martha, I received a call from an unknown number. Curious, I answered. Natan? The voice on the other end was unmistakable, though it lacked the confidence I was accustomed to hearing. It's Megan. My first instinct was to hang up, but something made me stay on the line. What do you want? Please, you have to help me, she said, her voice breaking. Someone sent the security video to the Department of Children and Family Services. They're investigating me at work. I could lose my license, my job, everything. I sat down slowly, a strange calmness settling over me. And why would I help you? Look, I know I made a mistake. A mistake? I cut her off, my voice dangerously quiet. You accused me of sexually assaulting my daughter. You tried to have me imprisoned. You manipulated my wife during her recovery from major surgery. You plotted to take my place in my family. That's not a mistake, Megan. That's a calculated campaign of destruction. I wasn't thinking clearly, she pleaded. After my divorce, the infertility diagnosis, I was in a bad place mentally. I need you to tell them that, to explain that I wasn't myself. The video speaks for itself, I said flatly. It shows exactly who you are. Nathan, please, she sobbed. I'll do anything. I'll write a formal confession. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll apologize publicly. Just please don't let them destroy my career. It's all I have left. The desperation in her voice was almost satisfying after everything she'd put me through. "Who sent the video?" I asked, though I had my suspicions. There was a pause. "Jessica," she admitted reluctantly. "She sent it to my supervisor with a detailed account of everything I did." That surprised me. Jessica hadn't mentioned taking any action against her sister. "Jessica did that?" "Yes," Megan said, a hint of her old bitterness creeping back into her voice. "My own sister. After everything I did for her." "Everything you did to her, you mean," I corrected. "You took advantage of her when she was at her most vulnerable. You tried to steal her child and her husband. I would have been better for both of you." Megan suddenly exploded, the facade of remorse cracking. "Jessica was always the golden child, always got everything handed to her. A perfect husband, a beautiful baby. It should have been me. I deserved that life more than she did." The raw envy in her voice chilled me. This wasn't just someone who had made poor choices in a moment of weakness. This was someone consumed by jealousy, to the point of delusion. "Goodbye, Megan," I said quietly. "Wait, Nathan, don't hang up, please. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I'm just stressed about the investigation. Please, I need your help. They're talking about criminal charges for filing a false report. I could go to jail." "Like you were willing to let me go to jail?" I asked, the memory of that night in the cell still vivid. "Karma's a bitch, isn't it?" I hung up without waiting for her response. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. There was a strange sense of closure in hearing her desperation, in knowing that she was facing consequences for her actions. Later that day, Jessica called to tell me she'd received a similar desperate call from Megan. She wanted me to retract my statement to her supervisor, Jessica said, to say I sent the video in the heat of anger, but that I didn't really believe she'd done anything wrong. "What did you say?" I told her I couldn't lie for her, that she needs to face the consequences of what she did. Jessica's voice was steady, resolute in a way I hadn't heard since before Emma was born. "She tried to destroy our family, Nathan. She tried to take Emma away from you. I can't forgive that." A week later, I learned through mutual connections that Megan had been suspended from her job pending a full investigation. The state licensing board was reviewing her past cases for signs of similar misconduct, and the district attorney was considering filing criminal charges for filing a false police report. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with Megan. Update. 6 months later. It's been a long road, but I wanted to update everyone who offered advice and support during the darkest period of my life. Your comments gave me perspective when I needed it most, and for that, I'm forever grateful. After much deliberation and several sessions with a family therapist, Jessica and I decided to attempt reconciliation, but on my terms. We've been in intensive couples therapy for the past 5 months, working through the trauma of what happened and trying to rebuild the foundation of our relationship. It hasn't been easy. There have been sessions where old wounds reopened, where we both left feeling raw and uncertain, but there have also been breakthroughs, moments of genuine understanding and forgiveness that I couldn't have imagined in those early days after the accusation. Jessica returned to teaching part-time, which has been good for her sense of identity beyond being Emma's mother. As for me, I've been focusing on my photography career and recently landed a contract for a book of wildlife images that will keep me close to home for the next year. Jessica moved back into our home 3 months ago, though we're still sleeping in separate rooms. We're taking things slowly, rebuilding trust day by day. Some nights we sit on the porch swing after Emma is asleep, talking about our day, or sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. It's not the easy intimacy we once had, but it's something new, and perhaps, eventually, something stronger. As for Megan, karma hit her hard. She lost her job and her social work license. The investigation into her conduct revealed that this wasn't the first time she'd made questionable accusations in her professional capacity. Several of her past cases are now under review, potentially affecting the lives of many families who were separated based on her assessments. She's facing criminal charges for filing a false report and potentially civil damages from me. My lawyer is handling that. Her reputation in the professional community is destroyed, and most of her former colleagues want nothing to do with her. The most satisfying moment came last month when Jessica and I were at the courthouse for a hearing related to Megan's case. Megan saw us walking in together, Jessica's hand in mine, and she completely broke down in the hallway. "Please don't testify against me," she begged, looking nothing like the confident woman who had once tried to destroy my life. "I'll lose everything." "You were willing to let me lose everything," I reminded her calmly. "My daughter, my marriage, my reputation, my freedom." Jessica stepped forward then, putting herself between me and her sister. "You did this to yourself, Megan. You tried to destroy my family because you couldn't stand to see me happy. I will never forgive you for that." Seeing Jessica stand up to Megan like that, choosing me, choosing our family, was a turning point for me. It doesn't erase what happened, but it showed me that the woman I married, the one I had trusted implicitly for years before this nightmare, was still there. Thank you, Reddit, for standing by me through this journey. Your support helped me keep going when giving up seemed like the easier path.